Chapter 675. After Qiao Jin heard this, he asked directly, "What's the reaction to the curse?" Zhongli Peining immediately understood and said directly, "When those people returned home, green moss grew all over their bodies. You know moss, right? It's like ringworm on your body. It's very uncomfortable and itchy. They're still in the hospital now. The doctors can't do anything about it. Their vital signs are very weak. I don't know if they'll all." This was what the curse array point was afraid of. No one knew what would happen in the end. After Qiao Jin heard this, he only said, "It's a very simple backfire curse. Those who shouldn't have entered the mausoleum will be cursed. They'll recover in a month." "A month?" Zhongli Peining was a little surprised. "Is this true?" Qiao Jin nodded, but his eyes were a little deep. "It's just a simple mistake to enter the mausoleum. It's just a small punishment. If you touch something you shouldn't touch, who knows?" Zhongli Peining's face turned pale again. It was obvious that this was only for those who entered the mausoleum by mistake. If they didn't enter the mausoleum by mistake, the curse wouldn't be so simple. Then, is there a way? Zhongli Peining wasn't an array master. She didn't know how dangerous it was inside. Qiao Jin said, "I don't know. I'll only know when I see the mausoleum. I don't want money. I only have one request." Zhongli Peining nodded. "Say it. In the mausoleum, other than the array point, everything else belongs to you. Even if there are clues to other array points hidden." Zhongli Peining felt suffocated. The reason why the spirit group was so excited to find a 4,000-year-old ancient array master's mausoleum was because of the array point. Now that Qiao Jin pointed out the array point, wouldn't their trip be meaningless? However, what did she dare to say? She looked a little embarrassed. "I actually don't know much about array masters. But you know that the array point is very important, so I have to ask the spirit group first. You can just tell them that it doesn't matter," Qiao Jin said with a perfect smile. "If I don't go, you won't be able to get the array point." It wasn't that Qiao Jin looked down on them, but the mausoleum of a 4,000-year-old ancient array master was definitely not something that could be broken into by modern people. If it was the people behind the Hurley family, there might be some hope. But how would they dare to come to Huaxia? If he came to China, he would be treated as a live target by Qiao Jin. He might even die. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that there was a mysterious person who hadn't shown himself yet. However, if there was a very powerful formation point, Qiao Jin would definitely sense it. She didn't panic at all. Zhongli Peining, the big shot, had a tight grip on the gate of life. Of course, she couldn't say anything, but she had underestimated him in her heart. Now that Qiao Jin had openly expressed her abilities, it meant that she had never been afraid of the spirit group. No wonder she had always been fearless. Zhongli Peining was glad that she didn't start a feud with her from the beginning. She knew that if an array master wanted to kill someone, his methods were much more terrifying than an ordinary wizard. Zhongli Peining said that she wanted to call the spirit group to let them think about it. Qiao Jin didn't stop her. She returned to the dormitory and called Song Yanqing. She asked directly, "Have you had any dreams recently? Or did you foresee anything in Nanjiang?" After all, he was a spiritualist. There was nothing wrong with asking him. Chapter 676. When Song Yanqing heard her question, he paused and said directly, "No, do you have something related to Nanjiang?" Qiao Jin said, "Well, I'm likely to go to Nanjiang. There is an array master's mausoleum there. There may be array points. Although I'm not interested in cursed array points, since this matter has been pushed to me, I'll go and take a look. Since you didn't sense it, then forget it." This meant that this matter had nothing to do with Song Yanqing. Nanjiang. Nanjiang is very far. Nanjiang had always been a mysterious place in the hearts of the Chinese people. Nanjiang was mostly mountainous. In this land, there were many mysterious ethnic groups, and many mysterious legends were passed down. Voodoo, witchcraft, and because it was mostly mountainous, there were many large mausoleums in Nanjiang. There was even no lack of emperors' mausoleums. There was a saying in Nanjiang, "If you walk in the wild, you may step on a graveyard." With such a legend, it added a gloomy color to the southern border. Song Yanqing frowned slightly. "Do you need me to go with you?" Qiao Jin said, "That's not necessary. You can do your own things in the capital. If you don't sense it, it means that this matter has nothing to do with you. Moreover, I'm going with the array master of the spirit group. It's not appropriate for you to show up." Song Yanqing thought of the current situation of the spirit group and raised his eyebrows. Why would the array master of the spirit group go with you? Qiao Jin couldn't help but laugh. I don't quite understand their thoughts. Zhongli Peining found me and said that she would give me 10 million to ask me to help. There are so many array masters in the spirit group, so it's impossible for her to find a wild array master like me for no reason. I'm inclined to think that there's a big problem with this mausoleum. Someone wants to dig a hole for me to suffer. Even if I don't suffer, they want to see how strong I am. The Feng family had fallen, but there were still several families behind the spirit group. There were still a bunch of array masters behind them who hadn't shown up, but it didn't mean that the Feng family's ancestor was the strongest. Song Yanqing sighed. Why? In the end, she had no choice but to jump into the pit herself by always finding fault with Qiao Jin. He said softly, "Since you're going, then be careful. If there's anything, you must give me a call." He still couldn't let go of the dream he had. Qiao Jin had fainted in a cave. When did that happen? Was he in great danger? However, since he didn't sense the southern border, it meant that this matter wasn't in the southern border. His heart still felt a lot better. Qiao Jin replied, "Okay." She had to wait for Zhongli Peining and the others to arrange the time. Probably because of the urgency of the situation, Zhongli Peining told her the next day that the array master of the spirit group had agreed, but they had to set off now. Qiao Jin definitely needed an excuse to apply for leave, but they directly went through the official channels and gave Qiao Jin a legitimate reason to leave, so the school did not ask. As for Qiao Fei, it was better not to tell them, so as not to make Qiao Fei worry. Qiao Jin finally saw another legendary spirit group, which was a team composed of array masters. Among them, she saw an acquaintance. The other party was very short, and his pupils turned out to be a rare double pupil. When he looked at people, he had a particularly mysterious feeling. Although he was not extraordinary, his eyes were enough to attract people's attention. Qiao Jin had sensed the other party when she was beside Ji Sikai. The other party must know Qiao Jin's identity, but he didn't know that Qiao Jin knew him. So when he saw Qiao Jin, the short man had no expression on his face. Chapter 677. In addition to him, there were 3 other men and 1 woman. Including Qiao Jin, there were only 6 array masters. This might not be all the array masters of the spirit group, but it also showed that there were very few array masters. Moreover, not every array master had the ability to challenge an ancient array master's tomb. The 3 men were all different in appearance, and there was a big difference in their temperaments. One of them even looked at Qiao Jin and was amazed by her. They were all dressed very luxuriously, and it looked like they were usually flattered. After all, they were array masters, and some of their abilities were enough for him to live a good life. The last girl was biting on a lollipop. She looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old, and she looked obedient and pure. She was wearing a rather exaggerated lowly princess dress. Coupled with her ability to look like a lowly, she looked like a cosplay enthusiast. She looked at Qiao Jin with a smile, and when she saw Qiao Jin, she took the initiative to greet her. "Hello, Sister Qiao Jin, my name is Ji Mengmeng." Qiao Jin raised her eyebrows slightly. "Hello, Ji Mengmeng." Because of her cute appearance, even her name was so suitable. Of the other 4, 3 ignored Qiao Jin, although they were also a little shocked by Qiao Jin's appearance. However, they had seen all kinds of beautiful women, and their hearts were calm. Because Qiao Jin was not a member of the spirit group, they did not find her pleasing to the eye. The only exception was the boy whose eyes lit up when he saw Qiao Jin. He greeted Ji Mengmeng enthusiastically. "Hello, my name is Zhao Yuandan." Qiao Jin. "Hello." This name was quite festive. Zhao Yuandan scratched his head. "Is my name a little strange? When I was young, I was born on New Year's Day, and my mother gave me this name for convenience. I can't not recognize my parents, so I just changed my name, right?" "Qiao Jin, that makes sense." Zhao Yuandan laughed. He looked like an ordinary sunny boy, and other than Ji Mengmeng, he was probably the lightest of the 4 men. The other 3 snorted coldly to varying degrees. They skipped the greeting step and waited to board the plane. There weren't many people flying to Nanjiang. The 6 of them occupied the first-class cabin, which was just right for a conversation. Ji Mengmeng simply sat with Qiao Jin and asked her with a smile, "Sister Qiao Jin, I heard that you want the array point inside?" Qiao Jin looked down at her. "Yes." The short man sitting opposite her let out a cold snort. Ji Mengmeng widened her eyes, looking curious and cute. "Sister Qiao Jin, are you so sure that there are array points inside?" "Qiao Jin, if not, I'll take 10 million. Neither side was at a disadvantage. Ji Mengmeng, Zhao Yuandan, on the other hand, had a lively personality. He immediately asked the 3 of them, "Is there any news from that side? Or did they not break in?" One of them seemed to reluctantly respond to Zhao Yuandan's question. He said in a muffled voice, "If there's no news, it means that they haven't broken in yet. The mausoleum of an ancient array master is not so easy to break in." Zhao Yuandan smacked his lips. An array master who is good at curses is not easy to deal with. "I'm really afraid that if I get infected with some strange curse, it will be GG when I come back." The man who answered sneered. "What are you afraid of? We have 10 million to hire foreign aid. They said that without her, we can't get the array point. What else can we do? We can only wait for the master to perform." Chapter 678. It was obvious who he was referring to, judging from the tone of his words. Zhao Yuandan glanced at Qiao Jin awkwardly. Qiao Jin didn't care at all. He didn't even blink his eyes. Looking at her calm appearance, Ji Mengmeng glanced at her, then glanced at the person who spoke. She burst into laughter. "Lu Ren, don't be so sarcastic. Look at him. He has the demeanor of a great god. You are just like a henchman next to him." Lu Ren's face stiffened. He sneered and didn't speak. Zhao Yuandan whispered to Qiao Jin again, "He is like this. Don't mind him." Qiao Jin probably understood. Probably these people knew that she wanted to take the array points and were not convinced, but why did they agree? She curled her lips, nodded, and didn't speak. Qiao Jin was a little famous in the capital, but it was not obvious. The Feng family's matter was strange, but not many people would directly suspect Qiao Jin. After all, a family was finished. Who knew what was going on? They were more inclined to believe that a few array masters joined forces to target the Feng family. In addition, the Feng family itself was seeking death, so it was miserable to this point. As for Qiao Jin, he was just a somewhat strange array master. This time, the spirit group invited her to be foreign aid. They might have the intention to win her over, but these array masters who had been in the organization were not convinced. The journey to Nanjiang was very long. The plane flew for 3 hours before arriving at this legendary land. Nanjiang City still had a main city. It was surrounded by mountains. The city center was surrounded in the middle of the mountain range. It could be said to be a naturally sealed place. It was just that the country did not believe in ghosts and gods now. The development here was very good. The modern metropolis of Nanjiang had long lost the mysterious taste of the past. Perhaps only in those deep mountains and seeing those ancient villages that were still sealed in the mountains could one understand the mysterious legends at that time. The plane landed, and it began to drizzle in Nanjiang City. A continuous chill was transmitted into people's bones along with the wet and cold air. It was so cold that people couldn't open their bodies. Now that it was October, the weather was getting colder. The spirit team arranged a hotel for them to stay in. When they arrived, only Ji Mengmeng, Zhao Yuandan, and Qiao Jin stayed in the hotel. The other 3 went directly to the local spirit team to find out about the situation. Since Ji Mengmeng and Zhao Yuandan were both there, Qiao Jin did not ask further. She didn't need to ask anything. She would naturally know when he returned. Qiao Jin was in the room, lying on the sofa and calling Song Yanqing leisurely. "I've arrived at Nanjiang City." The girl's obedient report came into his ears, and it seemed to make his tiredness of the day dissipate. Song Yanqing outlined his gentle eyebrows, How is it over there? Qiao Jin looked out of the window. It's pretty good. It's raining here. What about the capital? Song Yanqing, it's sunny in the capital. You should wear more clothes. Don't catch a cold. Qiao Jin said, I won't catch a cold. Her physical fitness was good, and she would never have such a small illness. Song Yanqing paused for a moment and laughed. I forgot. He was not sick now, let alone a person like Qiao Jin. Song Yanqing glanced at the document in his hand and pushed it away. He stood up and looked out of the window with deep eyes. He said in a low and gentle voice, when you come back, I will find a chance to formally visit Uncle Mu and Aunt Qiao. Chapter 679. He used to visit the Mu family and hang out with his friends. Now it was different. Qiao Jin was already his girlfriend, so he had to pay her a visit. Otherwise, others would think that he didn't care about Qiao Jin and didn't even visit her parents. Qiao Jin didn't care. Okay, they know it now anyway. Song Yanqing said, well, okay. You just got off the plane. Have a good rest. When are you going to take action? Qiao Jin said, maybe tomorrow. They went to ask the local Lingji group about the information they have. Song Yanqing asked, do you feel anything unusual now? Qiao Jin said, no, it's too far away. She thought for a moment, looked out of the window, and continued, Nanjiang is different from other places. There are many unusual situations here. She even felt the fluctuations of several array points. Those array points were big and small, strong and weak. But they were not very attractive to her now. And this was only in the city of Nanjiang. She had never felt so many array point fluctuations in other cities. Nanjiang was an extraordinary city. Song Yanqing paused and lowered his eyes. Be careful. Qiao Jin said, I will. At this time, the doorbell rang. Qiao Jin said goodbye to Song Yanqing and hung up the phone. He opened the door and saw Ji Mengmeng outside. She was still biting her lollipop and looking cute. Sister Qiao Jin, they are back. We can go to Zhao Yuandan's room to share the information. Of course, the information was about the mausoleum of the ancient array masters. Qiao Jin nodded and followed Ji Mengmeng. They entered Zhao Yuandan's room. They had already begun to discuss in the room. The speaker was one of the people who disliked Qiao Jin, Lu Ren. Seeing Ji Mengmeng come in with Qiao Jin, he didn't say anything. He just said, if there are no objections, we will take action tonight. Zhao Yuandan said, Qiao Jin is here. Shall we tell her about the situation first? Lu Ren sneered, does the great master need to know the situation? It's so simple. The Lingji group went in and was wiped out. Everyone is in the hospital now. Ji Mengmeng took out her lollipop and looked a little annoyed. Why do you all like to take action at night? Zhao Yuandan said, it's to hide at night. Since there was no one around, they wouldn't cause too much of a commotion when they used the array formation, so it wouldn't attract the attention of others. Qiao Jin did not care whether they talked about the situation at the scene or not. She just glanced at Lu Ren meaningfully and then turned around indifferently. Okay, let's go now. Everyone, they didn't expect Qiao Jin to be so straightforward. The short man spoke for the first time. His voice was a little hoarse. We have to leave now. It's a long way. They have a car to pick them up, but it will be at least midnight when we get there. We have to make some preparations. If you are hungry, bring some food. Ji Mengmeng said, but I don't know the situation yet. I just went to call Sister Qiao Jin. Zhao Yuandan said in a friendly manner, it's okay. I will tell you on the car. It's just two very simple pieces of news. We can't know the rest even if we want to. There was too little information about the mausoleum. Except that the array master might be a curse array master, there was no other information. Qiao Jin walked in front. When Lu Ren was about to leave, the short man suddenly said, don't target her. She is more evil than the Feng family. Chapter 680. Lu Ren immediately turned back to look at him, somewhat puzzled. What do you mean? Array masters like them thought highly of themselves. Usually, even if there were any news channels, they would only pay attention to themselves. They had only heard of Qiao Jin's appearance in the capital by chance. They didn't know the specific situation. But the Feng family had been in such a big mess recently that everyone knew about it. Firstly, they didn't dare to imagine that the Feng family would do things to such an extent. Secondly, Qiao Jin was even more evil than the Feng family. Then, the short man was called Lu Xian. At this time, he just had a sullen face. Not knowing is the most dangerous thing. He left this inexplicable sentence and walked forward first. Lu Ren was even more puzzled. At this moment, he didn't finish. He suddenly got angry and pulled Zhao Yuandan. What do you think he means? Zhao Yuandan pointed to Qiao Jin, who hadn't gone too far ahead, and whispered, "At least don't talk about it in front of her. She was still here. If she remembered it in her heart, it would be awkward." Everyone met for the first time. They didn't know each other's temperament. Who knew if the other party was big or small? It was not a wise move to make enemies with an array master. Lu Ren also saw that he was from the spirit group. There were several people in the spirit group. Qiao Jin was not from the spirit group. It was many against one, so he didn't think much of Qiao Jin. Now that Lu Xian reminded him and Zhao Yuandan didn't say anything, Lu Ren shut up resentfully. The spirit group's price was not low. They even gave the array point to the other party. He wanted to see how capable this Qiao Jin was. When they went downstairs, there was already a car waiting below the hotel. The place they were going to was very far. It was in the mountains outside Nanjiang City. The road was very bad. But because of the area of Nanjiang, there were many teams that liked to explore, so there were other roads. It was just too far. It was said that it would take 5 or 6 hours from here to the destination. Everyone was not familiar with each other. A large bus loaded everyone. Qiao Jin didn't like to talk. He just sat in his seat and focused on looking at his phone. Ji Mengmeng and Zhao Yuandan were seizing the time to catch up on sleep. After all, it would be the wee hours of the morning when they arrived there. If they were not in good spirits, it would not be a good sign for them. If they encountered danger, they would not be able to react in time. Apart from the driver, only Lu Xian and another array formation master were awake. Occasionally, Qiao Jin would meet the eyes of the remaining person. The other person would stare at her, sizing her up slightly, as if he was trying to figure something out. He didn't know how long the car had been driving. 2 hours later, they entered the mountainous area. Along the way, there were rugged paths. Looking around, it was all thick and boundless mountains. In this dark night, it was like a monster that chose people to devour. No one knew when it would open its mouth and swallow people. To dare to appear in these places in the middle of the night, one must have some courage. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, the car slowly came to a stop. The driver's voice could be heard. "Everyone, we're here." This sound instantly woke up the few array masters who were still in a daze. Although everyone wanted to rest, they were still alert. They would wake up very quickly if they encountered any noise. Everyone followed the sound and looked outside. They had already arrived at the foot of a mountain. In front of them was a jungle. Occasionally, they could even hear the sound of flowing water. At this point, the road was completely cut off. In front of them was a rugged mountain range. For the time being, they didn't have the ability to directly open up a path here. Therefore, they had to get out of the car and start walking. Chapter 681. Everyone got out of the car. The driver was waiting for them here. He would only wait until the morning. If not, he would go back in the morning. The driver who dared to come here was definitely not an ordinary person. Ji Mengmeng got out of the car and looked at the area in front of her. She muttered, "It looks very dangerous." There was no light in this mountain, and it was completely hidden in the darkness. Lu Xian took out a flashlight. When he turned on the light did not shine far, as if it was swallowed directly. They could only see an endless dense forest and the occasional squeak of small animals. They could vaguely see a road that seemed to have been walked by someone. Zhao Yuandan took out his phone and glanced at the map. "It's just in front. It will take about half an hour to reach the place. I have already drawn the map." Exploration teams often appeared here, so the map was ready-made. Everyone nodded and walked along the only road. They were all array masters, and their courage was not ordinary. Even the youngest Ji Mengmeng was not afraid in such an environment. The southern borders mountains were extremely famous. The mountain range here was continuous, and the peaks overlapped. If you went over one mountain after another, it would be surrounded by tall and dense forests. If you couldn't find a way out, then this place would definitely be a nightmare. The country had developed many mountains in recent years, but it was less than 1/10 of them. There were still many things hidden inside, waiting for humans to explore. Qiao Jin and the rest stepped into one of the mountain ranges. After entering, they were surrounded by tall trees, and it was almost impossible to see the path. Qiao Jin walked at the front. Lu Xian's flashlight naturally could not shine on her all the time. The light flickered, but Qiao Jin walked very fast, as if she was not worried that she would get lost. Catcher, catcher. Only the footsteps of these few people could be heard in the forest. When it was quiet, it was a little scary. Ji Mengmeng looked at Qiao Jin's back in front of her with her long hair fluttering in the wind. Although she knew that he was full of immortal aura, in the dark, Qiao Jin's back was the most frightening. She could not help but say, how did those exploration teams find such a remote place? I already said that it was an exploration team. Zhao Yuandan smiled and said, they must have walked around and found something amazing. There have always been many legends in Nanjiang, and it was the habitat of many emperors. It's not strange for an ancient array master's tomb to appear. It's just that this kind of array master's tomb usually needs some kind of opportunity to enter. I heard that these people entered by accident. Even they did not investigate the real situation. Because the array masters of the Earth Spirit Group were not good at these things, no matter how they looked at it, they could not see any problems. Only then did he ask for help from his superiors. Milo. He hadn't heard much about what happened last time. Most of the people who died were from the spirit group. They did not inform the array masters. Lu Ren snorted and said, I heard that they found the array points, but they went for wool and came home shorn. They died and were injured. There were array points, but they did not live to take them. Chapter 682. They all knew very well that with such a large number of casualties, there was definitely an array point inside. Unfortunately, there was no news of what the array point was. Milo, the only one who knew the news, was now missing. No one knew if he was the one who took the array point. Because of this, the Feng family had to bear a lot of responsibility. In the end, the Feng family was also gone. The spirit team had not even finished settling the score. Hey! Lu Xian's face darkened. Don't talk. There's a sound. Suddenly, they heard a strange sound. When they looked around, they found that they were still in the forest. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Qiao Jin was in front. Her light voice came. A small animal. Everyone, seeing that she was still walking smoothly, everyone had to follow. Lu Ren snorted coldly. Why are you still pretending? Can't we see it? Ji Mengmeng said. Lu Xian heard it. You didn't. Your ears are not very good. Lu Ren was angry. You didn't hear it either. Ji Mengmeng smiled. I didn't hear it. I didn't say anything. Lu Ren, everyone here was an array master. Everyone hid their abilities, but their general strength was about the same, so no one was convinced. Ji Mengmeng was the youngest, but she did not necessarily call others brother or uncle. Everyone had been walking for more than 20 minutes. Logically speaking, they should have arrived. However, Qiao Jin suddenly stopped and said very softly, We're here. Zhao Yuandan looked at his phone. The map shows that there are still a few minutes left. Although there was no signal here, they could directly estimate the distance. It did not match the place mentioned by the expedition team. Qiao Jin said, It's here. They didn't go to the opposite door. Everyone's face was a little solemn. Qiao Jin could actually say that they did not go to the opposite door directly. It meant that she had seen something. However, they did not see anything. Everyone looked at each other and began to use their own skills. They surrounded the ground and began to set up arrays. Their method of setting up arrays was very different from Qiao Jin's. They needed to connect the array points in various places around them, which was commonly known as drawing. Only array masters like them could see this thing. However, after drawing the array points, there was still nothing in front of them. They did not see anything. Everyone immediately saw the problem. They were at the end of a canyon in a mountain range. 2 more steps and they would be out of the forest. There was even a small waterfall in front of them. The waterfall flowed down the mountain rocks and accumulated in the pool in front of him. There were rocks on both sides, and there seemed to be traces of animals. Obviously, this place was a natural water spot. This kind of place wasn't rare in the southern border mountain range. However, Qiao Jin walked to the side of the pool and looked down. His eyes were calm as he said, "The entrance is below." Lu Xian stared at her with a solemn expression, but he quickly shifted his gaze to the bottom of the pool. Other than the splashes from the waterfall, there was nothing unusual on the surface of the pool. It was a very normal mountain spring. Ji Mengmeng touched her chin and asked hesitantly, "Should we go into the water?" She didn't really want to, mainly because they couldn't see anything. Now, they were all listening to Qiao Jin. That was what she thought, but someone had said it out loud. Lu Ren was not convinced. "If you say it's below, then it's below. We didn't see anything wrong. Why should we listen to you?" After he said this, Qiao Jin turned to look at him with a faint smile. Chapter 683. Being stared at by those calm and deep eyes, Lu Ren immediately swallowed. His heart throbbed inexplicably. "I'm just saying. It's up to you whether you want to go down or not." She reached out and pinched him. Then, she turned around and jumped into the pool without hesitation. With a splash, a living person jumped directly and quickly went down. The waterfall splashed quickly. In less than 2 seconds, there was no trace of Qiao Jin in the pool. Everyone, Zhao Yuandan glanced at everyone and said awkwardly, "She has already jumped. Let's jump." Zhao Yuandan believed that the person who spent 10 million yuan to find had a reason. He didn't feel any danger. He set up a simple waterproof array on himself, took 2 steps forward, and jumped. Ji Mengmeng only hesitated for a moment before jumping. 3 of the 6 people jumped. The remaining 3 looked at each other. Lu Xian and the array master jumped without hesitation. Lu Ren, what the fuck? He didn't even ask anything and just jumped. It was because they didn't see any problem that they were worried that Qiao Jin was tricking them. But now that everyone had jumped, he was the only one left on the shore. He hesitated for a moment and suddenly heard a strange sound behind him. In an instant, he felt his scalp tingle and his hair stand on end. It was the intuition of an array master. Lu Ren almost didn't think and jumped forward into the pool. Splash! The camera turned back. The light had completely dimmed. They could only see something white on the tree trunk of the dense forest beside the pool. It circled around the tree trunk and quickly shrank back. The pool water was very cold. It wasn't a big problem for Qiao Jin. Her body seemed to be separated by a layer of transparent film. The water couldn't get close to her body, so she could breathe freely underwater. This was a pool formed by a waterfall over the years. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be very deep. However, Qiao Jin jumped in and fell at least 10 meters. In front of her, there was still cold water. The figures above were also falling in one after another. Qiao Jin blinked and finally saw a faint light coming from below. It was the light of the array. They had arrived at their destination. This was just an entrance. He would only know what it was when he got closer. Qiao Jin fell the fastest and soon reached the bottom of the pool. It was still surrounded by stone walls, and the bottom of the pool was just a piece of silt. However, there was a lump of silt in the middle that was especially high, as if something was floating. Qiao Jin directly went over, and with a slight movement of his finger, a lump of sludge dispersed, revealing a copper ring underneath. It was like the doorknob of a large door. Whatever it was connected to, one would know with a pull. The fluctuations of the array formation came from above. Of course, it was not something that could be pulled open by force. Furthermore, the copper ring was located at the bottom of the pool. Once it was pulled open, all the water in the pool would instantly flow in. However, it was precisely because of the array formation that the copper ring was not necessarily as simple as it appeared on the surface. Qiao Jin looked at it from the side. Zhao Yuandan and the rest, who had landed behind, also saw the copper ring. Although they couldn't speak, they could still move freely. After Lu Ren landed, he reached out to pull the copper ring. Qiao Jin didn't stop him. The moment Lu Ren touched the copper ring, he seemed to be stabbed by something and instantly retracted his hand. When he looked again, the copper ring in front of him had turned into a human mouth. The mouth was wide open, and a row of sharp teeth could be seen clearly. Lu Ren, CTM. Chapter 684. He was wondering why this group of beasts didn't move after coming down. If Lu Ren had been a moment slower, he would have pulled the copper ring away. Who knew if this mouth would have bitten off his hand? Ji Mengmeng glanced at Lu Ren and rolled her eyes. They were all array masters. She didn't know why Lu Ren's vigilance was so low. They were all swimming in the water and couldn't talk to each other. Seeing that the copper ring in front of them had turned into a human mouth, everyone subconsciously scattered far away. Only Qiao Jin didn't move. The moment the mouth came out, she pushed the mud away even more. A woman's grey face suddenly appeared at the bottom of the pool. She had died here for many years. Her face had been soaked in mud until it was extremely pale, but her original appearance could still be vaguely seen. Her mouth was open, and her sharp teeth and eyes were staring. All of this showed how terrifying she was. Ordinary people would probably have nightmares for 3 to 5 years after seeing her. Especially when Qiao Jin pushed her away, the woman's eyes at the bottom of the pool moved. Her gloomy eyes glanced directly at Qiao Jin. Ji Mengmeng. Zhao Yuandan. The two of them were so scared that they almost screamed. Even for array masters, it was rare to see such a terrifying scene. Only Lu Xian and the other array master, Tang Yimeng, were very calm. Lu Ren was so scared that he swam as far away as he could. Array masters were suitable for fighting on land. The water was pitch black, and now they saw something that only appeared in horror movies. This was too much of a test of their endurance. Qiao Jin didn't change at all. She even directly waved her hand to slap the woman's cheek. The woman's expression suddenly became incredulous, but there was nothing she could do. Qiao Jin's palm didn't hit her cheek, because she turned into a cloud of smoke and blended into the soil, as if she had disappeared naturally. Underneath her head was a copper ring that looked exactly the same as her head. This was the real entrance. Only Qiao Jin didn't take this seriously. If it were other array masters, they would probably be bitten until they started to doubt their life. Qiao Jin pulled open the entrance of the copper ring without hesitation. Bang! The movement in the water should have been very small, but everyone seemed to hear a drumbeat in their hearts. Dong dong dong, it was very shocking. As the copper ring was pulled open, a glaring light leaked out. The surrounding caves, cliffs, ponds, and mud all began to sink down along with the copper rings. It was as if a vacuum had appeared below. At that moment, everyone realized that their bodies were no longer under their control and they were sliding down. It was not that there was a door under the copper ring, but the moment the copper ring was pulled, the surrounding scenery started to change. They continued to fall uncontrollably, and the water became thinner. Splash! The sound of water exploding suddenly came into contact with the air, and everything became clear. The few array formation masters were at a loss as they could not stop their bodies from falling. Qiao Jin's body was light as a feather. As he fell, he saw the things around him explode as though they had turned into starlight. Amidst the sparkling starlight, they looked like memory fragments that floated in midair. They mixed with the soil and were not obvious at all. Qiao Jin reached out and grabbed a piece of debris. Then, she felt a strong attractive force. Even she couldn't control it as it pulled her into some place. With a boom in front of her, everything returned to silence. Chapter 685. When she woke up, drops of water were falling on her cheeks. A drop of water hit her eyelashes. She opened her eyes and saw that she was lying in a cave. Backtracking array? She frowned and looked down. Her clothes had changed. She was only wearing a thin white dress. She was surrounded by a cave, dripping with water. It was dark and damp. Ji Mengmeng and the others were gone, but she felt that nothing had happened to them. To be able to pull her array, this array point was definitely not simple. There was also an array master. Although the situation in front of her was a little out of control, she still calmly turned over and sat up. Drip, there was only a very quiet dripping sound around. There was a glimmer of light in front of her, like an exit. She stood up and wanted to walk along the light, but found that she couldn't walk out. Was she trapped? There shouldn't be an array in this world that could trap her. She felt for a moment, and her face suddenly changed. She was the one who had set up this formation. Was she trapped in the array she set up? But why was that? She looked at the surrounding stone walls. The light in the cave was not as dim as before. With the help of the light, she saw some patterns engraved on the stone walls. There were some simple drawings of people kneeling and worshipping something. When she looked forward, she found that it was a person. This figure was only a back view. Compared to the simple kneeling human in the painting, this person's lines were exaggerated to the point of being very tall. He was wearing a long robe. Only this figure, although thin, had a kind of aura that made people want to prostrate themselves in worship. She looked at the engraved figure faintly and felt a familiar feeling from it. She knew this person. And he wasn't from this era, but from 10,000 years ago. Suddenly, she felt a cold breath on her cheek, as if someone was touching her cheek. Her mind moved, but she didn't feel any dangerous aura. A very familiar voice sounded, with a gentle longing and a distant sigh. "Are you cold? Song Yanqing?" She wanted to turn her head, but she didn't see anything. The cave was empty, and there was no Song Yanqing's figure. The touch on her cheek seemed to have disappeared, but there was still a lingering feeling of dependence. "Song Yanqing." She spoke, and her voice echoed in the cave. She knew that this was not real, but she felt that Song Yanqing was here. Which Song Yanqing was it? She frowned and suddenly realized that her amnesia was not as simple as it seemed. She was the one who had set up the array, so why did she sense Song Yanqing inside the array? At this moment, thousands of miles away in the imperial capital, a man who had been resting on his bed suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils were as black as ink, but at this moment, his eyes were clear and bright, as if he hadn't woken up at all. Song Yanqing. That voice belonged to Qiao Jin. He didn't know where it came from, but he heard a series of echoes. He frowned and sat up in his black pajamas. He found that the black gas in the corners of the room had already reached the point where it was corroding the entire room. When he listened carefully, there seemed to be the whispers of demons. Just a little bit more and it would devour the bed where Song Yanqing was lying. Seeing that he had woken up, the black aura instantly rolled and disappeared. He only stared at the slowly disappearing black aura, without the slightest bit of panic. Borrowing the hazy light outside the window, his gentle and handsome side profile added a trace of coldness. Chapter 686. He got up and put on a coat. Outside, he could hear Dan's steady breathing. A faint light flashed through his black eyes. If there was any movement, Dan would sense it. With that thought, he closed his eyes and thought about Qiao Jin's direction. He couldn't think about Qiao Jin directly. That way, he wouldn't be able to determine her location. He could use another method. After about a minute, Song Yanqing's face paled for a moment. In the next second, the space around him twisted. When he opened his eyes, a gust of cold wind hit him. It was so cold that it made him shiver. He coughed heavily. He was surrounded by a dense forest, but there was a waterfall in front of him. A bright moon hung in the sky. The moon was dim and cold, reflecting Song Yanqing's pale face. He clenched his fists, covered his mouth, and coughed heavily. He felt his strength drain away, and he felt a little dizzy. It wasn't that his body was too weak, but that he had forcefully teleported from the capital to here. He had used the power of a spiritual master of speech. His current strength wasn't enough to teleport such a long distance, so his body couldn't withstand it. But he still came. Because he heard Qiao Jin calling him. Looking at the scene in front of him, he suddenly thought of the scene in his dream. He frowned. He didn't know if Qiao Jin had encountered some problem. The surroundings were quiet. Qiao Jin had already walked along the stone wall and finished looking at the simple murals. It seemed to be a scene of a sacrifice. Unfortunately, other than the man in the picture, the rest of the pictures didn't express much. The only difference was that Qiao Jin felt that the murals and array were from 10,000 years ago. There was no trace of the so-called ancient array master from 4,000 years ago. Could it be that their survey was wrong? She stared at the murals for a while and suddenly felt that something was wrong. The tall figure was still flickering with a dim light, and it didn't seem to be from the mural itself. Qiao Jin stretched out her hand to dig at the wall. The seemingly hard stone wall seemed to have been marked by someone long ago. When Qiao Jin's hand touched it, she felt some marks. Her fingertips hung, and a piece of broken stone fell down. Then, a small blue stone fell out of it. It was a small blue stone. It was very ordinary and had a little bit of light, but it didn't have the texture of a gem. The moment she held the stone, the deep and cold voice rang in her ears again. "Do you like it? This is for you." She looked around to make sure she hadn't heard wrong. It was indeed Song Yanqing's voice. However, she also knew that it was impossible for Song Yanqing to appear here, nor did he give her anything like this. She thought of the memories she had lost, and her eyes suddenly became deep. Could the things she had forgotten be related to Song Yanqing? But wasn't Song Yanqing a modern person? How could he be related to her from 10,000 years ago? Looking at the back figure with a heavy gaze, Qiao Jin realized that she still couldn't remember anything. The only thing she could remember was that this voice was too familiar to her. It was Song Yanqing's voice. It was as if he had always been by her side. It was rare for her to frown. She realized that the memories she had lost might be more important than she thought. She didn't feel any danger. She only saw a cloud of fog. This cloud of fog was related to Song Yanqing. Chapter 687. The first time she saw Song Yanqing, she saw it on him. He had the ability of a spiritual master of speech and was entangled by the Rakshasa realm. All these signs indicated that he was not an ordinary person. But she did not see any connection between him and the old era. There was another possibility. The voice she imagined might be someone else's voice. It was only because she was too familiar with Song Yanqing that she recognized it as Song Yanqing's voice. There was this possibility, but it was not big. She pinched the stone and was still in deep thought. The scene in front of her changed instantly. She heard Lu Ren's terrified voice. "What do you mean? You want to kill us?" She narrowed her eyes for a moment and stood up in an instant. The scene around her had changed drastically. She was in an underground palace. The Lu Ren in front of her had a sense of fear and hatred towards her. Ji Mengmeng was lying in the distance. The others were also looking at her with shocked eyes. Qiao Jin looked at her hand and looked at Lu Ren again. She only saw a group of array formations coming towards her, flickering with raging flames. She waved her hand and blocked it. Her eyes were cold. "Who did you say wanted to kill you?" Lu Ren gritted his teeth. "You want to kill us? Stop pretending. You actually attacked us behind our backs." Qiao Jin instantly understood some problems. She only said, "I wasn't here just now. No matter what happened, what you saw just now was an illusion." She only stretched out her hand and pulled. The red silk threads covered the sky and covered the earth, surrounding the entire underground palace tightly. She glanced around. She could only see that this was a grand hall, but it was all made of stone. There were few shadows of buildings from the later era. Qiao Jin roughly understood. This underground palace was the residence of the real 4,000 years old ancient array masters. "You think it's an illusion just because you say so?" Lu Shenju's face was dark. "You attacked Ji Mengmeng directly just now." Qiao Jin glanced at them. "If I want to attack you, you won't be able to leave this place alive." Among the red threads, there were already strange light spots flashing and fleeing. Qiao Jin looked at the combined formation and only said in a low voice, "It's just the lowest level of camouflage. You can't even see through this. You've really impressed me." The illusion was fake. It was impossible for her to have her strength. If she wanted to kill this group of people, she could do it silently. Why would she need to go through so much trouble? Lu Ren, you. His face was flushed red. Qiao Jin couldn't be bothered with them. He walked straight to the deepest part of the hall. The hall was very empty, and the walls were made of stone. There were stone pillars at the four corners, and there was kerosene at the top of the stone pillars, as if it was originally burning with flames. It was probably used for lighting. However, after a few thousand years, it had long dried up into a pitch-black lump. In the deepest part of the hall, there was a high platform. On the high platform, there was a stone coffin. The stone coffin hadn't decayed or weathered for thousands of years, and it was completely sealed. It was as if the coffin's mouth and body were directly cast. There wasn't a single gap, and no one could find a way to open it. However, Qiao Jin felt that the array point was inside. Lu Ren and the others had just been attacked by the fake Qiao Jin and were now frightened. However, when they saw Qiao Jin suddenly return to normal, as if nothing had happened, they looked at each other. Zhao Yuanju went to help Xi Mengmeng, who had fainted in the corner. Lu Xian and Tang Yimeng saw Qiao Jin walk straight to the stone coffin and tentatively walked over. Chapter 688. Qiao Jin looked at the sarcophagus and narrowed his eyes. It was just a rare curse array point. She had just fallen into the array that he had set up. The two had nothing to do with each other, but they appeared in the same place. Therefore, it could be explained that this array master came later and did not know of the existence of this array master. No matter who it was, he was also locked in here. Qiao Jin sized it up for a moment. Lu Xian went forward to push the sarcophagus and said, "We can't open it at all. There isn't even an opening." This kind of unscientific method of casting made it seem like a model of a sarcophagus was built to suppress it here. Tang Yimeng looked and listened for a while. Suddenly, he said, "There's something inside." He still had some eyesight. It was not easy to sense what was inside the sarcophagus. Lu Ren walked up with a pale face. He was still staring at Qiao Jin with vigilance. When he was about 8 feet away from him, he asked, "Could the array point be inside the sarcophagus?" Lu Xian said, "It's possible even if it's placed on a corpse. If we don't open the sarcophagus, we can't get the thing." Tang Yimeng looked around. "It's impossible to open it. There's a restriction array set up here. Other than this array master, we only have..." Just as he finished speaking, Qiao Jin had already reached out to pinch a few red threads of the array and strung them on the sarcophagus. Rumble, the sarcophagus made a strange sound, as if it was forcefully opened by someone. There was actually an obvious crack. It was the crack of the sarcophagus. Cracks appeared on the body of the sarcophagus and the lid. The entire sarcophagus was shaking. The lid was also shaking violently. Soon, a wide crack appeared. From within the crack, a faint glimmer of light could be seen. It was as if something was emitting light from inside. In an instant, it lit up a corner of the hall. Lu Xian, who was closest to the sarcophagus, narrowed his eyes. He reached out to grab something, but a ray of light rushed out from the sarcophagus and went straight for Qiao Jin. He missed it by a hair's breadth. Qiao Jin reached out and looked at Lu Xian with a faint smile. "Didn't I say that the array point belongs to me?" Lu Xian's face was livid. Before the few people beside her could react, Qiao Jin had already taken the array point. That was fucking infuriating. Lu Ren stood at the side and looked at Zhao Yuandan in the distance. Although he was angry, he didn't do anything to snatch it. Lu Xian clenched his fists tightly and glared at Qiao Jin. In the end, he looked away and gave up. However, Tang Yimeng's sight was not on Qiao Jin. He did not even pay attention to the formation point that had rushed out at the first moment. His eyes were tightly locked on the inside of the stone coffin. There was some horror in his eyes, but there was also an inexplicable infatuation, as if he had seen something extraordinary. Qiao Jin already felt that there was something special inside, and it was still alive. She took 2 steps forward, and the lid of the coffin let out a huge rumbling sound as it was smashed to the side. What appeared in front of Qiao Jin and the others was a woman in a bright red robe. She had a tasseled crown on her head. Even in today's modern times, it was a rare handicraft. What was more shocking was her beautiful and enchanting face. Her eyes were tightly closed, and her perfect lips were as red as blood. She was so alive that even her skin was porcelain white and flawless. It was as if she was just sleeping quietly, and not a dead person. Chapter 689. What is this? As array formation masters, Tang Yimeng and the rest were quite knowledgeable. They had only heard of immortality from some old monsters, and they had to pay a hefty price for it. However, this was the first time they had seen an array formation master whose corpse had not decayed. No one would doubt the woman in front of them even if she said that she had just fallen asleep. Her face even had a certain seductiveness to it. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating, as if it could make people lose themselves in her beauty. Qiao Jin lowered her eyes to take a look, and a hint of interest suddenly appeared in her eyes. The main array point on her body had already been taken, but there was still another array point on this corpse. It was right at her heart. She was dead, and her heart was no longer beating. That array point just stayed there quietly. If not for Qiao Jin, no one would have discovered it. However, what interested Qiao Jin was not this, but the woman in front of her was actually gathering a kind of vitality quickly. She was about to be resurrected. She was really coming back from the dead. Anyone who came back from the dead had to pay a price, and Qiao Jin was the same. She was still wandering in the river of time for 10,000 years, but the woman in front of her was actually gathering vitality. What was the price she had to pay? The karma on her body indicated that she had already paid the price. There was no need to think about it. It was a very tragic price. So she was interested. This woman was about to be resurrected, and she wanted to take her away. However, the others did not know. The others gathered around. Qiao Jin turned around and took a look. Ji Mengmeng was still unconscious. She waved her hand, and Ji Mengmeng woke up in a daze. Seeing Zhao Yuandan's shocked expression, Qiao Jin said, "Nothing happened to her. She was just blinded by the array formation. She's fine now." Ji Mengmeng also asked in a timely manner, "What happened?" Zhao Yuandan heaved a sigh of relief. The few of them came closer and saw the woman in the stone coffin. Ji Mengmeng exclaimed and expressed her opinion first. "So beautiful. Why are all the girls in this kind of coffin so beautiful?" "Everyone," Zhao Yuandan said faintly. "Usually, these are either goddesses or female ghosts. Which one do you want to see?" Lu Xian, on the other hand, had a sullen look on his face. Her body did not decay after death. She must have used a formation to exert pressure. She must be a formidable monster. We have already obtained the formation point. Let's destroy her body and leave as soon as possible. Ji Mengmeng immediately said, "That's not a good idea. What if this is the ancient array master? What if we get into trouble? She's good at curses." Lu Ren glared at her. "What can we do? What if an even bigger problem occurred? Or should we go back the way we came and pretend that nothing happened?" Most importantly, there was nothing in the coffin except for the woman. He couldn't possibly strip her of her clothes. The formation points were also gone, and he didn't get anything. This trip could be considered a waste of time. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Qiao Jin looked at Lu Ren and said faintly, "Lu Ren, do me a favor? Carry her up and I'll give you the 10 million. Lu Ren, are you fucking crazy?" Not only Lu Ren, but the others also looked at Qiao Jin in horror when they heard this. Zhao Yuandan couldn't help but say, "You want to carry this female corpse? This is a corpse." They had seen many dead people. It was impossible for them to carry a corpse and run. Qiao Jin sighed. "Forget it then." Chapter 690. Since they weren't willing to carry it, he could only trick them into leaving first. Then he would send the coffin back. People in this era didn't even care about 10 million yuan. Lu Xian and the others stared at Qiao Jin as if they were having cramps. Who would dare to do such a thing? Now that they had obtained the formation point and dealt with the matter, they naturally had to go back and report. Originally, they didn't know how to return. But as soon as they walked out of the underground palace, a path appeared. After walking out, they appeared in front of a cave. When they had arrived, the sky had still been dark. But now, the sky was turning white. Zhao Yuandan muttered, "Strange. It felt like we had only been down there for half an hour." Ji Mengmeng asked why Qiao Jin had suddenly appeared in a different place from them. When they had fallen into a small path. Not long after, they had reached the underground palace. Then Qiao Jin had suddenly attacked Ji Mengmeng. That was why they had seen that scene just now. Qiao Jin naturally didn't say that he had seen something else. He only said, "Your eyes are playing tricks on you. I've always been by your side." When she had appeared, Lu Ren had been glaring at her. They hadn't been here for that long. Lu Ren still looked at Qiao Jin doubtfully. Qiao Jin now understood that other than Tang Yiming and Lu Xian, the other formation masters were just formation masters. Just like Du and Nianru. Even if they were formation masters, it didn't mean that they were all scheming and astute. They just happened to have the ability of formation masters. In fact, they didn't even know what some basic formations were. As expected, formation masters were incomparably rare. Even if they gathered together, they were completely useless. If Qiao Jin hadn't come today, they would have all died. As formation masters, they were usually flattered. They had seen too little. It was no wonder Qiao Jin had obtained the formation point. Other than Lu Xian and Tang Yiming, the others hadn't said a word. Lu Ren only hated Qiao Jin for taking it. Did they know what the formation point was used for? Not necessarily. Just as Qiao Jin was about to speak, he suddenly felt something. She glanced into the forest and suddenly said, "You guys go first, I'll catch up later." Lu Ren said, "If you take the array points, you should at least go back and report it to us. Do you want to keep it for yourself?" Qiao Jin glanced at him. "This array point was originally mine to take. Do you have a problem with that?" Lu Ren, Lu Xian and the others were full of anger. When they left, they glanced at Qiao Jin and warned him, "You've taken the array point, but you'd better not touch the female corpse inside. Otherwise, you'll be the one to suffer." He waved his hand and left. Zhao Yuandan and the others glanced at him and could only choose to follow him. Ji Mengmeng only urged, "Sister Qiao Jin, hurry up." After they left, Qiao Jin walked in a direction. Before he took 2 steps, Song Yanqing's figure slowly walked out of the forest. He was wearing a coat and looked like an elegant gentleman. However, he didn't look well. And he didn't know how long he had been there. Qiao Jin frowned and said, "You directly teleported here?" Song Yanqing nodded. When he saw Qiao Jin, he felt a lot more at ease. He stepped forward and grabbed Qiao Jin's arm. "I heard you call me." "Call you?" Qiao Jin suddenly remembered that when he was in the cave, he did call Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing felt it. Chapter 691. Qiao Jin found it strange that they were so far away from each other. In her mind, the memory might be related to Song Yanqing, and it became closer. Why was Song Yanqing so sensitive to her? However, this was not a good place to talk. Qiao Jin said, "Let's go back and talk. Wait for me to make a call first." Song Yanqing nodded. She lowered her eyes slightly and saw Qiao Jin's wrist. Fortunately, it seemed that nothing had happened. Qiao Jin took Song Yanqing back first. They went in the opposite direction from Ji Mengmeng and the others, mainly because they couldn't see Song Yanqing coming. He found a place with some signal and gave Meng Chengyu a call. Meng Chengyu was a little surprised when she received the call. "Qiao Jin." Qiao Jin said gently, "Meng Chengyu, I need you to do me a favor. Is Yang Cholu the only one at home now?" Meng Chengyu said, "It's okay. Just tell me. I'll help you if I can. Yang Cholu is not at home now. Sister He Yarrow has something to do and has to go to another city. She has nothing to do, so she was called by Sister He Yarrow to take care of the child. There's no one at home now." He Yarrow was still taking care of Lan Xiaoni. Now that Yang Cholu was taking care of her, She had found something to do. Qiao Jin said, "It's good that there's no one at home. I need to put something in it, but it's a little abrupt. If you don't want to, forget it." Meng Chengyu didn't hesitate. Put anything. Is it a delivery?" Qiao Jin said, "A coffin. There's a female corpse in the coffin." Song Yanqing suddenly looked up. Meng Chengyu, even though her temperament had already reached a higher level, she still felt as if she had received a huge blow when she heard this sentence. She couldn't help but lower her voice. "Did you kill someone?" He seriously suspected that Qiao Jin wanted to destroy the evidence. Qiao Jin chuckled. "Of course not. This female corpse is an ancient person. She is very far away from us and can be resurrected at any time. I need to put her in a safe place where I can control her." Meng Chengyu now felt that following Qiao Jin was really an eye-opener. She sucked in a breath of cold air. It can be resurrected. Why was the operation so mysterious now? Qiao Jin said, "Yes, and it should be soon." She even suspected that the array point in her heart was one of the 9 array points. It seemed that the fact that the formation points all fell on the hearts of living people was going to be overturned. Meng Chengyu hesitated for a moment before agreeing. "It's fine. You can let it go. I won't go back either. I'll tell young Qiulu not to go back for the time being." Qiao Jin thought for a moment. "She's pretty." Meng Chengyu, "Boss, this wasn't a matter of whether she was pretty or not. The other party was a female corpse." However, Song Yanqing seemed to be amused. He pursed his lips into a smile and looked at Qiao Jin with a slightly amused expression. Since Meng Chengyu had agreed, Qiao Jin was much more direct. She used the array formation to teleport the stone coffin directly to Meng Chengyu's house in the imperial capital thousands of miles away. Even if the people from the spirit group went back to investigate, they wouldn't be able to find the underground palace. Once the coffin disappeared, the entire mountain range shook slightly. When they came back again, they couldn't find any trace of it. After hanging up, she looked at Song Yanqing and said in a relaxed tone, "Let's go. After this matter is settled, I'll tell you something interesting." Song Yanqing nodded. He didn't ask anything. In any case, Qiao Jin would tell him anyway. He felt that she must have discovered something this time. Chapter 692. Qiao Jin left with Song Yanqing. The road in the jungle was not easy to walk on. In addition, Song Yanqing had suddenly appeared. Qiao Jin directly teleported him to the city. Soon, they found a place to rest in a room. Fortunately, Song Yanqing had prepared an ID card before they came. After entering the hotel room, Song Yanqing sat on the sofa to rest. At this time, his face was a little pale. It was obvious to the naked eye that his complexion was not good. Qiao Jin said, "Your body can't withstand such a long-distance teleportation." His ability was now slowly growing. Even if his progress was rapid, it was not like this. Song Yanqing opened his eyes and looked at him deeply. His tone was very soft. "I heard you call me." He was worried, so he came directly. In addition, he could not reach him on the phone. Qiao Jin raised his eyebrows. "You heard me call you?" Such a long distance meant that it was abnormal. Song Yanqing nodded. "Yes, it was a bit like an auditory hallucination, but I don't think I heard wrong." He saw Qiao Jin's expression and said directly, "You really called me, didn't you?" Seeing that he had guessed it, Qiao Jin nodded. "So I feel that something is wrong." Qiao Jin pursed his lips and sat beside Song Yanqing. "It was so far away. Before you came, you did not dream that this matter was related to you. But you heard me call you. I followed them and did find the mausoleum of an ancient array master. The sarcophagus I mentioned just now was that array master's. The woman was a female corpse, but now she is going to be resurrected. Of course, this is not the key problem. The key is that there was an array I set up in the place where she was. I heard your voice in the array." Song Yanqing listened attentively and frowned when he heard that. "You heard my voice. What was it?" It was possible that something else was luring her. But with her ability, such a thing could not happen. It was very natural. It was a very normal question, as if he was right beside her. Only when she turned her head did she realize that there was no Song Yanqing beside her. Qiao Jin's eyes swept across his face. There's something I didn't say. I actually forgot some things, but these things are very far away. In the memories I lost, there seems to be something about your existence. But she was very sure that she should not have met the modern Song Yanqing. After she woke up, her memories of the 20 years in the modern world were clear. There was not a single scene where Song Yanqing appeared. About me? Song Yanqing said in a low voice. He understood what Qiao Jin was implying and understood that Qiao Jin was probably not referring to the current period of time. He knew very well that he had never met Qiao Jin when he was young. She suddenly stretched out her hand. Her slender fingertips were a little cold. She touched Song Yanqing's eyebrows and said in a thoughtful tone, "Is it reincarnation?" Reincarnation was actually a rather vague thing. Once a person died, all the karma would be cut off cleanly. Even she could not tell what a person's previous life was. There was no example to prove it. Then reincarnation was just a fake thing. Her example was a bit like reincarnation, but it was not. Only Song Yanqing didn't have any shadow at all, but it was strange. Unless, like Qiao Jin, he was resurrected through a special channel. But he forgot. Chapter 693. Song Yanqing also understood the meaning in her words and couldn't help but laugh. Do you think that I'm the same as you? Qiao Jin shook his head. Right now, it's just a guess. You don't have any memories, so I can only guess. If you are related to me, then it's very regretful, because I don't even know who you are. She didn't remember if there was a person called Song Yanqing in her memories. Song Yanqing was also a pure modern person. Even if there was a problem, it was impossible for the current her to know. I'm not the shadow of anyone in your memories. Song Yanqing suddenly grabbed Qiao Jin's wrist. His pitch-black eyes looked at Qiao Jin and he said seriously, I'm just Song Yanqing. Of course I know. Qiao Jin took his hand back and said, You're Song Yanqing. I won't mistake you for anyone else. It's just that right now, things are a bit strange. Song Yanqing's expression relaxed and his eyes were still as gentle as ever. You sense danger? Qiao Jin shook his head. There's no danger. It was just that there were a few more unsolved mysteries. Right now, that sarcophagus has already been moved out by me. It's also possible that she just built a mausoleum in my formation. It's a coincidence, but it's not a coincidence that she has an extra formation point on her body. Things were always progressing step by step. She would get an answer sooner or later. Song Yanqing couldn't help but ask, You found another formation point? Qiao Jin nodded. That female corpse's heart is the same as Meng Chengyu and Yang Qiulu's. They both have a formation point. At the moment, this formation point is completely useless to them, but it can be used to suppress them. Qiao Jin had told Song Yanqing about the 9 formation points. Now, Song Yanqing could understand. He found the third one so quickly. His speed was quite fast. Song Yanqing asked, Can she come back to life? Qiao Jin nodded. Yes. Song Yanqing was a little curious. I'll go back with you to see her. Qiao Jin, sure. Not long after she talked to Song Yanqing, she received a call from Ji Mengmeng. Sister Qiao Jin, where are you? Qiao Jin said, I've already returned to the hotel. You guys can go back first. I'll be back soon. Ji Mengmeng was a little embarrassed. Oh, Qiao Jin could tell that she was implying something, so she said, I'll give you an explanation when I get back. As for what kind of explanation it was, that was just a superficial explanation. Ji Mengmeng, okay. Although they were array masters, there was still a huge gap between them. She, Zhao Yuandan, and the others were too young to understand many things about array masters. This time, they were brought here purely because they were forced to do something beyond their abilities. Qiao Jin could already tell. If such a group of people could challenge the ancient array master's mausoleum, the future of the spirit group was indeed bleak. How should he put it? The standard of spiritual readers nowadays was getting worse with each generation. After hanging up the phone, Lu Ren was still grumbling on the other side. We didn't feel like we were in any danger. We didn't even see the array. It was all broken by that woman. I now suspect that this is a trap, just to lure us in. Lu Xian could not help but say, shut up. If she wanted to kill you, with your vigilance, you would have died 8 times over. That mausoleum of array masters is really not that easy to break into. She solved it so easily. Doesn't that make you think of something else? That was, Qiao Jin was even more terrifying than the ancient array masters. Although a dead array master could not compare to a living one, how could modern people understand the ancient array masters from thousands of years ago? Chapter 694. Qiao Jin didn't take it seriously at all. It was enough to see how dangerous she was. So Lu Xian just looked a little unwilling when the array point was taken, but he didn't dare to say anything. Lu Xian's position in the spirit group was different. After being scolded by him, Lu Ren still stopped. He only said resentfully, isn't it because she took advantage of us? Tang Yiming, I now suspect that the destruction of the Feng family was not an accident. He was usually a man of few words. His sudden words made Lu Xian look over. Lu Xian and Tang Yiming both had a deep look in their eyes. They were obviously thinking the same thing. It wasn't an accident. Lu Ren waved his hand and said, didn't they say it was done by someone? Even if it's their weakness, they have to be capable. Zhao Yuandan couldn't listen anymore. With the background of the Feng family in the capital, who dares to touch them? The mastermind behind this incident didn't even leave a trace. It was terrifying. Ji Mengmeng didn't say anything. Lu Xian said, after we go back this time, just answer the questions truthfully. As for the rest, keep quiet. That was something Qiao Jin would deal with. If something went wrong here, who knew what would happen? Zhao Yuandan thought for a while and suddenly said, is that female corpse the ancient array master? Everyone was silent for a while. Ji Mengmeng guessed, it seems like it. Didn't Qiao Jin want to take her away at that time? He even wanted to take the corpse away. Zhao Yuandan gasped, he is really a ruthless person. Several people were discussing here. On the other side, Qiao Jin also returned to the capital with Song Yanqing. They said they were going to deal with the matter, and it was done quickly. 10 million yuan was too easy to get. Of course, she said that she wouldn't take the money after taking the array point, so she didn't ask the spirit group for the money. She only told Zhongli Peining what happened. Zhongli Peining was very smart. After listening to the whole analysis, she didn't ask any unnecessary nonsense. She only asked, that female corpse is the array master. Is she dead? Qiao Jin smiled and said, of course he's dead. Do you think that a formation master who lived until now didn't have to pay a price? Zhongli Peining smiled embarrassedly. Are you holding the curse array points? Qiao Jin nodded. Yes. Zhongli Peining nodded, as if she didn't want to ask about other information. Qiao Jin's interest was piqued. Don't you want to know more? I'm sure you guys will be full of questions now. Just like that day when the spirit group was monitoring her, they even suspected that Qiao Jin was a dangerous person. Zhongli Peining smiled embarrassedly. To be honest, we had to monitor you because of the rules, but now we don't think it's necessary. This matter was also a test. Qiao Jin didn't feel any pressure at all. They weren't stupid. The person in front of them was a big boss through and through. Why would he need others to control him? After hesitating for a moment, Zhongli Peining said, I know some things are redundant, but I still have to say it. Our spirit group itself isn't under the jurisdiction of ordinary people, but we also have to maintain social stability and rely on the country. We have always been independent, so except for a few families, everything is basically decided internally by the spirit group. Qiao Jin, I think you are a person who knows how to respect life, so don't do things like the Feng family. The Feng family had infiltrated the spirit group from the beginning, and they hid it too well. The spirit group couldn't find any substantial evidence. Chapter 695. If one day they found out that Xiao Jin had done something similar, with her ability, she would definitely be classified as a terrorist. Modern technology might not be able to deal with Xiao Jin, but spiritual readers were also ordinary humans. They could also grow old, get sick, and die. At that time, it would not only be the spirit group who would find out that something was wrong, but also the country. Even if they had to make a lot of sacrifices, they would probably do anything to make Xiao Jin disappear. Now that Xiao Jin had not made any moves, and she was very strong, the spirit group would naturally not cause any trouble. Xiao Jin was a little excited and did not care about Zhongli Peining's words. She knew that she was just reminding her out of kindness. This proved that the current spirit group was powerless to control Xiao Jin. As long as she did not want to destroy the world, everyone could talk. You don't have to worry about this. Xiao Jin smiled and said, I am not interested in anyone. As long as they did not provoke her, no matter if they were spiritual readers or ordinary people, they were all the same in her eyes. When Zhongli Peining heard her words, she also felt a little relieved. She smiled and said, Then I will go back and report first. You can look for me in the future if you need anything. Xiao Jin, go. Zhongli Peining was going back to the organization. She and Song Yanqing were going to see the female corpse. Song Yanqing returned to the capital and went back to the Song family first. He disappeared early in the morning, scaring Dan out of his wits. When he returned, Dan was in the living room enduring Song Shirin's anger. He was almost crying for his father and mother. When he saw Song Yanqing, he seemed to be about to cry. Young master, why did you go to Nanjiang? They found out that Song Yanqing boarded the plane back to the capital from Nanjiang, but how did he get there? When did he go? Dan wondered if he was a little delirious. Song Yanqing coughed softly. Last night, you fell asleep. I didn't wake you. Dan, he was so vigilant, but he didn't hear the young master's voice. Was the young master so scary now? Song Yanqing told Dan and went to see his father. No one knew what he said. In short, he came out in 10 minutes, and Song Shiyin did not pursue it. When he came out, Song Yanqing called Dan. Send me to pick Xiao Jin. Yi muttered, why is he with Miss Qiao every day? Even if he's in a relationship, he doesn't need to be so intimate. Isn't the company busy? When he received Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing asked her, everything's settled. Because Dan was an outsider, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing didn't say anything. But he suddenly thought of something and said, I happen to have time. I've put off work today. How about I go to the Mu family with you tonight? Xiao Jin didn't object at all and said naturally, okay. She wanted to go back to school, but the Ling group had helped her apply for leave. It was better to go back to the Mu family. An interested smile appeared on Song Yanqing's lips. Do old Master Mu and Uncle have anything they like? Does Auntie have any hobbies? She had to find the right medicine. After all, it was her first time visiting. She had to prepare a good gift. In the end, Xiao Jin failed. She thought carefully. After 3 seconds of silence, she said, I don't know about Zhenming. Fei Fei likes to play mahjong. Song Yanqing. Chapter 696. Song Yanqing was a little amused. Then I'll buy a few gifts. Xiao Jin said sincerely, they will like whatever you buy. With Song Yanqing's status, the gifts would not be too low, and the Mu family would not hate Song Yanqing. That being said, Song Yanqing winked at Dan, and Dan understood. Miss Qiao did not provide any information, so it was very easy for Dan to go out and ask around in the market. For them, it was not difficult to do these things. Young Master and Miss Qiao went to deal with things, and he could help Young Master choose the gifts. The car stopped downstairs in Meng Chengyu's neighborhood. It was broad daylight, and there were not many people downstairs. The car was not conspicuous nearby, but when Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin got out of the car, they attracted a lot of attention. They were used to this kind of attention, and walked toward Meng Chengyu's house in the neighborhood. Although Meng Chengyu did not give them the key, it was too easy for Xiao Jin to enter the house. As soon as they entered, they saw the square stone coffin in the living room. The coffin lid was lifted, which meant that the stone coffin was now open. They only needed to take 2 steps forward to see the woman lying in the stone coffin. This scene was really challenging the limits of people's endurance. Meng Chengyu and Yang Cholu had made the right choice not to come back. Song Yanqing was a little puzzled. Why did you put her here? If you need a safe and hidden place, I can provide it. Yang Cholu and Meng Chengyu are both holders of the array points. I put her here to see if she will have any conflict with the two of them. When Meng Chengyu saw Yang Cholu, his heart beat so fast that Yang Cholu almost directly awakened. Song Yanqing nodded to show that he understood, and walked over with Qiao Jin. This stunning woman was still lying in the stone coffin, wearing a black tasseled crown and a red robe, but it did not look like a wedding dress. 4,000 years ago, human civilization had just begun to develop. Logically speaking, people should not have dressed like this. However, Qiao Jin himself had existed for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, he knew that some things had simply been buried over time. When Song Yanqing saw the woman in front of him, his dark pupils suddenly darkened. An image suddenly appeared in his mind. There were thousands of people kneeling on the ground. The wind swept up thousands of miles of yellow sand. They all knelt on the ground with solemn and dignified expressions. High Priest! High Priest! With my life, with my blood, I offer it to the heavens. I hope that the High Priest will recover after 1,000 years and revive Chen Kang. With my life, with my blood, I offer it to the heavens. I hope that the High Priest will recover after 1,000 years and revive Chen Kang. Boundless, solemn, and even sorrowful. One by one, there were men and women, and there were even young and old. They knelt on the ground and prayed to the heavens. Then, their necks were slit. Bright red hot blood, like the most gorgeous and scorching rose, bloomed on the yellow sand. The yellow sand in the sky wailed, like the mournful wails of malicious spirits. In an instant, it engulfed the entire earth. The wind swept up the yellow sand, instantly enveloping all the shadows. All of this was buried under the yellow sand. This scene on the surface of the lake only lasted for a short 2 seconds. Song Yanqing frowned slightly and muttered, High Priest? Was this the past he saw? Qiao Jin instantly looked at him. What did you see? A spiritualist could see the past and know the future. This was a talent that could not be compared. Chapter 697. Song Yanqing looked at Qiao Jin and told her about the scene just now. Qiao Jin thought, 4,000 years ago, this woman was a high priest. Song Yanqing asked her, using other people's lives in exchange for her own resurrection, is this theoretically feasible? Of course it's feasible. Qiao Jin said, as long as there is an array, the Feng family can borrow luck with life. This kind of 1,000 people's lives in exchange for the resurrection of a high priest, and it's voluntary. This is the first time I have seen this. This resurrected woman will have a big problem. Chen Kang? Song Yanqing, I think if historians know about it, they will have a headache. Qiao Jin suddenly said, it's possible that she has existed for more than 4,000 years. In her era, the concept of a country had already begun, but all traces of what happened were covered up. Song Yanqing pondered for a moment and said, it's possible. If a country called Chen Kang existed 4,000 years ago, then there will be no trace of it. It should be before this. Human civilization has records from 5,000 years ago. It might be even longer ago, but it was covered up by something. After all, if the spiritual psyche master existed, it was enough to cause a lot of things that modern society couldn't understand. Qiao Jin raised her eyebrows. Song Yanqing guessed correctly. She didn't say that she came from 10,000 years ago. The current problem was this woman called the High Priest. She was extremely beautiful. Now that she was lying quietly in the coffin, she looked very lifelike. If she was in the entertainment industry, any actress would be overshadowed by her bright face. Her vitality was getting stronger and stronger. In less than a week, she would be resurrected. At that time, only this woman's resurrection could give an answer. Qiao Jin didn't care about the secrets of this woman herself. She just wanted to know what the third array point represented in her body. She was a curse-type array master when she was alive, and she was resurrected by 1,000 people's blood sacrifice. Her strength was definitely not comparable to modern people. If Qiao Jin didn't exist, she might not know when she would wake up. It was obvious that the underground palace was passive, which was why there were signs of resurrection. Although she was beautiful, Song Yanqing lost interest after looking at her and confirming that she couldn't get more information. It was only because she was a person from 1,000 years ago that she had some interest. The most interested person might be the historian. Song Yanqing remembered that Qiao Jin said that she heard his voice in the cave, and he was still thinking about it. After looking at this woman, they left again. When he went downstairs, Ardan stepped forward and said, "Young master, the things you need have been bought. It will be delivered in about an hour or two. Do you need to wait a little longer?" He also told Xiao Fei so that she could be mentally prepared. However, before it was evening, he received a call from Xiao Fei. Xiao Fei on the phone was furious. "Jin, are you in class now?" Mom encountered something infuriating. Xiao Jin was a little surprised. "What's wrong with you?" Xiao Fei said angrily, "Didn't I tell you that your Uncle Mu used to have a confidant? She used to annoy me. Later, your Uncle Mu ignored her. Now that she is back, she even asked Uncle Mu to pick her up. Uncle Mu didn't pick her up. Now, she broke into our house and made things difficult for Grandpa Mu. She is making me angry. What a vixen." Xiao Fei was so angry. Chapter 698. After listening to Xiao Fei's complaint, Qiao Jin pondered for a moment and said, "Then I'll come back right away? I'm just outside the school right now." Xiao Fei was so busy with her own matters that she didn't even think about why Qiao Jin was outside. She quickly said, Okay, come back quickly and help your mother. She also brought her daughter over and tried to humiliate you. Qiao Jin, who is she trying to humiliate? Qiao Jin hung up the phone, looked at Song Yanqing and whispered, "I have to go back first. Do you want to come with me or come over tonight?" Fei Fei asked me to go back. She said that there are strangers at home and something happened. Song Yanqing was next to him and vaguely heard a little bit of the conversation. He thought it was a little funny. "Wait for another 10 minutes. I'll go back with you, okay?" Qiao Jin nodded, "Okay." Song Yanqing was waiting for Azai to ask someone to buy something. He also looked at the things and they were indeed suitable gifts. After the gifts were sent over, he and Qiao Jin went to the Mu house together. Xiao Fei was a little restless in the living room. Naive and sweet people also have their own sensitive senses. When they were young, they had a quarrel with Bai Lianhua in front of them. Now that they are older, they can no longer compete with each other. Bai Lianhua is called Li Sikhan and the daughter she brought is called Erin. She is the child of a rich businessman from abroad. In all fairness, Li Sikhan is quite good. When she was young, she was a famous rich beauty. She was used to putting on airs. At least in the eyes of others, she was a perfect rich beauty. If it weren't for the private argument between Xiao Fei and Li Sikhan, she would also be confused by Li Sichan's performance. The current Li Sikhan is a very fashionable and delicate lady. Like Xiao Fei, she is very well maintained. She is beautiful and generous. In front of her, her daughter is somewhat overshadowed. Li Sichan's father and Mu Xiangshan were partners. Although he went abroad early, Li Sikhan and Mu Zhenming were childhood sweethearts and had a good relationship. If it wasn't for the fact that Mu Zhenming had no interest in her, who knew who Madame Mu would be now? The only reason Xiao Fei could smile now was because of her good attitude. At least on the surface, Li Sikhan was quite good. Even Mu Xiangshan didn't think there was anything wrong with her. Only Xiao Fei had quarreled with her in private. At this time, he completely understood Li Sichan's attitude. She had a good relationship with her husband now. It was just that she came back to vomit Xiao Fei. She called Mu Zhenming. In the end, when Mu Zhenming called home, it was Xiao Fei who went to the gate to pick him up. On the way there, the two of them had already mocked and ridiculed each other. Both of them had a successful family business and had both children. However, Li Sichan's son was working abroad and had not returned. This time, Li Sican had brought her daughter, so this battle could be considered a draw. While chatting, they began to talk about their daughter. Li Sican didn't come back for a long time, so she knew that Qiao Fei had a daughter. Curious, she stepped on Qiao Fei's sore spot. Qiao Jin was once framed for taking drugs. This made Qiao Fei very angry. Now, she was pretending to talk about small talk in front of Mu Xiangshan. Women don't like each other. At least, that's how Qiao Fei felt. She learned to smile in social interactions while calculating in her heart how long it would take for Qiao Jin to come back. My daughter is much prettier than your daughter. She will blind your dog eyes, she thought angrily in her heart. Chapter 699. Li Sichan's appearance was bright and generous. She was wearing a lake green cheongsam with a knitted shawl on her shoulders. Her short hair was permed into big waves. She had the flavor of a woman from the era. Her daughter sat beside her cautiously and talked to Mu Xiangshan. When the servant's voice came from outside, Qiao Fei stood up excitedly. Qiao Jin's shadow appeared. More importantly, she brought Song Yanqing with her. Qiao Fei was a little shocked. Why was Lord Song here? When Qiao Jin brought Song Yanqing in, Song Yanqing called out gently from afar. Grandpa Mu, Aunt Qiao. Mu Xiangshan saw Song Yanqing and raised his eyebrows. Yanqing, you're here? His tone was amiable. The smile on Li Sichan's face slowly faded when he saw Song Yanqing. Who was this young master? With a single glance, one could tell that he was an extraordinary talent. As for the girl beside him, sure enough, Qiao Fei smiled and said, Jin, why did you bring Lord Song back? Li Sichan's daughter was younger than Qiao Jin. When she saw Song Yanqing, her eyes were filled with unconcealable amazement. However, there was still a hint of restraint in her eyes, but she refused to look away from Song Yanqing. Let me introduce you. Qiao Fei pointed at Li Sican with a smile. This is Junming's good friend, Aunt Li Sican. Qiao Jin nodded. Song Yanqing said, hello. He didn't call anyone, but his tone was polite enough. Li Sican looked at Song Yanqing and then at Qiao Jin. She suddenly felt a little suffocated. Qiao Fei showed off without a trace. Miss Li, this is my daughter, Qiao Jin. This is her boyfriend, Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's smile softened. He looked at Qiao Fei and said, Aunt Qiao, I'm here to formally visit you. This is a little gift. He handed the things in his hand to Qiao Fei. Qiao Fei was a little surprised. You just came to visit. Why did you bring a gift? Mu Xiangshan also had a gift. Qiao Jin handed it to him. This is from Song Yanqing. Mu Xiangshan took it and didn't rush to open it. He raised his chin slightly. Sit down first. Let's have dinner here. It just so happens that Sai Chan is back, and the house is lively. Song Yanqing, okay. Qiao Jin didn't object. Qiao Fei took Song Yanqing's gift. Li Sican looked at Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing. After a while, she smiled. Hello, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing, right? I didn't expect Qiao Fei's daughter to be so big after so many years. She looked at Qiao Jin and sized her up. There seemed to be a trace of disbelief in her eyes. Qiao Fei raised such a daughter. She kept these words in her heart and introduced her daughter, Erin, at the same time. Erin looked at the two and greeted them carefully. Although she had been paying attention to Song Yanqing, when she heard that he was Qiao Jin's boyfriend, her gaze couldn't be too warm. She looked away, but still looked a little shy. She didn't look like a child raised abroad. Later, Qiao Fei came downstairs. They sat in the living room downstairs and talked about the past. Now that Qiao Jin was back, Qiao Fei was more confident. He spoke to Li Sican more firmly. The two talked about the past. Qiao Jin heard a lot about Qiao Fei and Mu Zhenming. Chapter 700. If one had to describe it, it would be what a mess. Li Sikan used to be Mu Junming's childhood sweetheart. She worked with Mu Junming for a while when they were young. Later, Mu Junming and Xiao Fei got married, and she went abroad after attending the wedding. Their eldest son was slightly younger than Mu Chiji, and their daughter was even younger than Xiao Jin. It was obvious that she was doing well now. She seemed to be a little curious about Song Yanqing and asked several questions. In the end, Xiao Jin was sure that Li Sikan didn't know who Song Yanqing was. In the past, the Mu family didn't have the ability to connect with the Song Yanqing, so it wasn't strange that Li Sikan didn't know who Song Yanqing was. Not long after, Mu Junming called and said that he was on his way home. Li Sikan volunteered that she would cook for him tonight and said with a smile, "Uncle, you haven't eaten my cooking for a long time, right?" Li Sikan was young, but she didn't act like a rich young lady. She even learned cooking for Mu Junming. She was talented, but it was a pity that she didn't fall in love. Xiao Fei's face turned green. Although she raised Xiao Jin and knew how to cook some basic dishes, she didn't know how to cook difficult dishes, especially now that she was pampered in the Mu family. How could she remember how to cook? Mu Xiangshan raised his eyebrows. "But you're a guest. How can you cook?" "So what?" Li Sikan ran her fingers through her hair. "We're family." Xiao Fei, this shameless woman. She was furious. Seeing that Li Sikan had already entered the kitchen, she said shamelessly, "I'll help too." Mu Xiangshan glared at her. "Can you cook?" Xiao Fei said angrily, "I'll help. I can eat." Mu Xiangshan, after the two of them went in, the few people left in the living room looked at each other. Song Yanqing felt that Li Sikan and Xiao Fei were too strange. He pondered for a moment and confirmed that it was not good for him to get involved in this matter, so he did not say anything. Mu Xiangshan was worried that Erin would be bored, so he asked Erin, "Erin, do you know how to play chess? Can you play with Grandpa for a while?" Erin nodded and said cautiously, "I've been with my mother." Mu Xiangshan smiled. "That's good." He called for someone to bring over Chinese chess and asked Erin to play with him. He then said to Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing, "You two stay at the side and learn a little." Xiao Jin, forget about Xiao Jin, but Mu Xiangshan definitely knew how to play Song Yanqing. He didn't say anything and just sat beside Xiao Jin, watching Mu Xiangshan and Erin play chess with great interest. Xiao Jin heard the argument between Xiao Fei and Li Sikan in the kitchen, but the content made her a little surprised. Xiao Fei followed Li Sikan into the kitchen and said, "Do you know what you're doing right now?" Li Sikan said slowly, "Green tea bitch." "TSK, what do you know?" "I'm much better than a green tea bitch." Xiao Fei was shocked. "You still have the cheek. You came back to annoy me, didn't you?" Li Sikan glanced at her disdainfully. "Yeah, I saw that you were living too comfortably, so I came back to make things difficult for you. Why did you come in when I'm cooking? Why, are you afraid that I'll poison you?" Xiao Fei said confidently, "I came in to help." "Why? Can't I?" Li Sikan, "TSK, you're so virtuous. Have you been cooking for Junming all these years? How can you show your culinary skills to others? You're still calling him Junming. Are you so unreserved at your age?" He accused Li Sikan of playing with his feelings and insisted that Li Sikan compensate him millions of dollars in damages. Li Sikan scolded him for being crazy. Of course, she was unwilling. In the end, they got into an argument. Not only did her ex-boyfriend want to rape her, he even wanted to kill her. People who were agitated to the point of losing their rationality. At that time, if it wasn't for Xiao Fei, who was passing by, who swung a brick in shock and broke his head, Li Sikan might have died. Xiao Fei hit him until he had a concussion and cried miserably. Later on, he was sent to the hospital. It was Li Sikan who used her connections to settle the matter. She paid for the scumbag's treatment, but after he was released, she didn't let him have an easy time. She was the kind of person who refused to be taken advantage of. Chapter 702. After the incident, Li Sikan asked Qiao Fei not to tell anyone about it. Qiao Fei was scared to death that he had hit someone, so of course, he would not tell anyone about it. This incident became a secret between the two of them. They had not seen each other for many years. After all, they were former love rivals, so Qiao Fei still kept an eye on him. It was said that Li Sikan was doing well abroad. Anyway, she occasionally heard Grandpa Li mention it. Li Sikan said, "I think you are doing well. You are not a good person, but your child is quite good. You must have inherited Mu Zhenming's genes. If you had inherited them, you would be finished." Qiao Fei was furious. "What do you mean by that? Jin is not my biological child yet. Look at how well I have raised her." Li Sikan said, I heard that she took drugs a while ago. That is a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. Qiao Fei and Li Sikan were arguing in the kitchen, but Qiao Jin heard it clearly. She did not expect that the two of them would have such a relationship. She immediately smiled. Song Yanqing saw it and asked her softly, "What are you smiling about?" While they were talking, Li Sichen's daughter, Irin, looked over and saw Song Yanqing talking to Qiao Jin gently. She was a little envious. Qiao Jin said slowly, "Nothing. I just thought of something interesting." They watched Grandpa Li and Irin play chess in the living room. After a while, Mu Zhenming came back. When Mu Zhenming returned, he naturally exchanged some pleasantries. After all, Mu Zhenming hadn't seen Li Sikan for many years. In any case, they were old friends. After asking about Irin's well-being for a while, Qiao Fei and Li Sikan began to serve the dishes one after another in the kitchen. Mu Zichu was in school, so he did not come back for the time being. When the dishes were served, Mu Xiangshan first glanced at them and then asked Qiao Fei, "Which one did you make?" Qiao Fei said cleverly, "I made all of them." Mu Xiangshan was speechless. After that, he didn't even dare to eat another dish. Li Sikan came out of the kitchen with a plate of dishes with a smile on her face. Her elegant appearance made it hard to tell that she had been busy in the kitchen for a while. She carried the dishes out with a smile on her face. "Uncle Mu, Zhenming, come and have a taste. I haven't cooked for a long time. I don't know if my culinary skills have deteriorated." Qiao Fei, she snorted sourly. It had to be said that Li Sichen's cooking skills were not bad. At least, Qiao Jin felt that there was nothing wrong with it. She brought Song Yanqing here and was also the focus of everyone at the table. From time to time, she would say a few words to Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's table manners were elegant and refined. From time to time, he would respond to Mu Xiangshan and Mu Zhenming's conversation. Both the guests and the host enjoyed the meal to their heart's content. Li Sikan didn't use words to provoke Qiao Fei. Instead, she let Qiao Fei hear it. She came back this time for something. She had a project that was related to the Mu family's company, so this time, she came back to deal with this matter and also to visit an old friend. Ever since her parents passed away, she rarely returned to the country. There was nothing worth remembering here. This time, she would only stay for 3 days. Mu Xiangshan made the decision to let her rest here. After dinner, Li Sikan wanted to go shopping. She dragged along a reluctant Qiao Fei and left Irin at home to accompany Mu Xiangshan. When Qiao Jin sent Song Yanqing out, he could hear Qiao Fei and Li Sikan arguing. When she arrived at the living room, she saw Mu Xiangshan playing chess with Irin. When she saw Irin, she raised her head and called her with a smile, "Sister Qiao Jin." She was younger than Qiao Jin, so it was appropriate for her to call her sister. Qiao Jin nodded. When she was about to go upstairs, she suddenly saw a faint wisp of black energy above Irin's head. She paused for a moment and stopped in her tracks. Mu Xiangshan noticed her reaction and asked, "Do you have something to say?" Qiao Jin pursed her lips. No. She saw that Irin's black energy was a wisp of death energy. The death energy was very small now. It would probably take a long time for it to appear. Chapter 704. However, it wouldn't be more than a few years. In other words, something would happen to Erin. She looked at the girl who was smiling shyly in front of her. She didn't see any malicious intent. When she saw the death aura, she just paused for a moment and went upstairs. Mu Xiangshan looked at her back as she turned and left. He was deep in thought. When he went upstairs, Qiao Jin received a message from Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing, something will happen to Erin. She will be murdered. The first time he saw Erin, he saw the scene of the girl's accident. He saw people's fates based on their fate. Erin's fate wasn't good, so he saw some clues. The difference was that he and Qiao Jin could see the cause of death but didn't know the time. The other knew the time but didn't know what would happen to Erin. When he saw this message, Qiao Jin was deep in thought. Erin was Li Sichen's daughter. After all, she was Feifei's friend and had interacted with Feifei before. Qiao Jin set up an array and calculated Erin's fate. It was a long time ago. He only calculated that Erin died because of family ties. Family ties didn't mean that it was done by relatives. Instead, it was possible that she was murdered because of the people around her. It would still be a long time, so there was no need to rush. After Qiao Jin looked at the fate line, he replied to Song Yanqing's message. It was Jin Jinyo, I got it. Li Sikan did stay in the Mu family for 3 days before returning to China. He left very quickly. Qiao Fei was the one who sent him off. Li Sikan left with Erin. Qiao Jin didn't say this casually. It was too long ago. If he said it in advance, it would lead to changes. Moreover, it wasn't something that could be said directly. She went back to school. Her life returned to normal. Now, she just had to wait for the female corpse in Meng Chengyu's house to be resurrected and find out what was going on. During this period of time, Qiao Jin also received a special business. The person who pushed the business was none other than Fan Jin. Fan Jin had a friendship with Phoenix Chen Yen. Since Phoenix Chen Yen went abroad, Fan Jin also went abroad to relax. The voice she recommended to Qiao Jin this time was also a female celebrity in the industry. She had helped Fan Jin a lot before and had a good relationship with Fan Jin. Now that she had encountered some problems, Fan Jin recommended her to Qiao Jin to test her fate. This celebrity was also very famous. If this news were to spread, the entertainment industry would probably tremble. Because he didn't believe that information on the internet could be kept secret, the other party insisted on a face-to-face meeting. Qiao Jin didn't intend to agree at first, but after thinking that this female celebrity had some skills, he was suddenly interested. Moreover, she was really generous with the money. At least, it showed that she was not short of money. If Qiao Jin agreed to a face-to-face meeting, the other party was willing to pay 10 million for just one meeting. Qiao Jin looked at the twists and turns of fate on the other party and agreed. In any case, the spirit group knew about her current identity. It was indeed better to discuss such a big deal offline. Therefore, after making an appointment, Qiao Jin met with the other party. The location was at the female celebrity's house because he didn't believe it was anywhere else. Qiao Jin followed the information provided by the other party and came to a very famous manor area in the capital, Zalu Manor. Zalu Manor was a villa area. Each family occupied a very large area. It was the most expensive area in the capital. Each family was worth hundreds of millions. Chapter 705. Zilu Manor was famous not only because of its size, but also because of its history. There were many legends that had been passed down. One of the mansions that this celebrity had bought was said to have been the residence of a historical figure. When Qiao Jin arrived, it was the celebrity's personal bodyguard who came out to greet her. Seeing how young Qiao Jin was, the celebrity was very surprised. After confirming her identity, she brought Qiao Jin in. The manor was very big. She had to take a car to enter from the outside. It took a few minutes to reach the mansion. There was a huge man-made lake in the front yard of the mansion. It was the size of the house. One could imagine how rich this celebrity was to be able to buy this area. This celebrity was a female celebrity named Chao Juanmin. Chao Juanmin's name could be said to be a household name. In the past, she was famous throughout Huaxia. She had been famous for a long time. She was famous throughout the country. She was only in her 30s, but she had been out of the entertainment industry for a few years. It was said that she was unmarried and was quite beautiful. When Xiao Jin was brought into the mansion by the bodyguard, she heard a cough. She walked to the beautifully decorated entrance. The interior was decorated in a European style. It was very grand but spacious. Chao Juanmin's manager stood at the door. When she saw Xiao Jin, she was a little surprised. "You are that master?" In their imagination, a master should at least look like an immortal. In fact, he did look like an immortal. It was just that Xiao Jin was so young that they could see it with their naked eyes, which was a bit shocking. Being young meant that he had little experience. Chao Juanmin's manager, Li Lian, was a little hesitant. Her manager used to be very powerful. Xiao Jin couldn't be bothered to understand this. Seeing her, he nodded. "Where's Chao Juanmin?" Li Lian paused. When they were contacting each other online, they weren't sure if Xiao Jin could be trusted, so they gave him a fake name. She didn't expect him to know who was looking for her. However, Li Lian had shown her face in the media before. She thought that he only knew it was Chao Juanmin after seeing her. She nodded. "She's inside." At the very least, he was someone recommended by Fan Jin. He didn't know if he was reliable. Xiao Jin noticed that after she came in, the bodyguard left and closed the door. In an instant, only her manager and herself were left in the empty mansion. It looked a little lonely. If it weren't for the fact that it was daytime outside, the cold decoration style would have looked a little gloomy. When Li Lian brought her in, she said, "Don't tell anyone about what you saw," because the other party was a master, they still treated him with respect. However, this kind of respect was a little awkward. It seemed that it was not only because of Xiao Jin's identity. After Xiao Jin walked in, he understood what Li Lian meant. On the sofa in the side hall sat an extremely graceful woman. Her figure was extremely good, and just her back view alone was enough to charm thousands of people. However, if one ignored the strange stiffness of her legs and the old bark-like skin, she was an out-and-out beauty. When she heard someone come in, Chao Juanmin turned her head. Half of her face was still beautiful, but the other half, like the old bark, the tree had melted, as if it had been painted with realistic special effects. If a timid person saw Chao Juanmin's current appearance, they would probably scream in fright. Chapter 706. Who is she? Chao Juanmin subconsciously covered the other half of her face. She looked like she was about to cry. Her manager went out to pick up a master, but who knew that she would bring back such a young one? She subconsciously thought that someone had broken in. She was very afraid of being seen by anyone. If it was exposed, she wouldn't be able to live anymore. And it would cause panic. Who would have thought that the beautiful Chao Juanmin would become like this? Xiao Jin walked over and saw the tree on Chao Juanmin's face. He found it interesting. "Did you suffer a backlash?" Chao Juanmin was stunned for a moment. Her manager, Li Lian, came up to her and said, "This is the master recommended by Fan Jin." Fan Jin? Chao Juanmin was a little stunned. "So young. Why are you used to judging people by their age? The person who made the deal with you should be very young, right?" Chao Juanmin's body stiffened. What did you say?" Xiao Jin smiled and said, "I can tell at a glance that there's a reason why you're so popular. There was no lack of beauties in that era. The reason why Chao Juanmin was popular was not because she was really beautiful, but because she had some special means. She met an array master. This array master made a deal with her and gave Chao Juanmin good luck, giving her the opportunity to become popular. And anything that involved borrowing luck was definitely not a good thing. Chao Juanmin had already suffered a backlash. Chao Juanmin was flustered by Xiao Jin's words and subconsciously avoided Xiao Jin's gaze. No one was willing to admit that their current achievements were obtained through dishonest means. Even Chao Juanmin's manager didn't know. But now that she saw Chao Juanmin's strange situation, anyone with a normal brain would know that there was definitely something wrong with her. Instead of going to the hospital, she went to a master. This proved that something was wrong. However, Chao Juanmin had no other choice. Her manager had been with her for so many years and could be trusted. She couldn't find the person from back then, so there was nothing else she could do. Chao Jin reached out and touched Chao Juanmin's arm. Her arm had not completely transformed into a tree, but it felt like old bark, prickly and rough. Chao Juanmin subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but she found that she had to face Chao Jin's gaze. Chao Jin set up an array formation on her body and easily found out some things. Chao Juanmin had made some deals back then, but she wasn't completely in the wrong. She didn't even realize what price she had to pay for making this deal. But now that the price had come, he had to make a choice. Chao Jin just asked her, "What is your request?" "You asked me to help you solve your current predicament." "Of course," Chao Juanmin said without hesitation. "Don't tell me you're here to watch the show." "I'm going to make a comeback next month, but now that I'm in this situation, I can't act anymore." When she said this, she was filled with sorrow. Acting was secondary. The key was that she couldn't see anyone at all. She could scare a group of people to death if she went out like this. If it was made big and posted on the internet, she wouldn't be able to live. Chao Jin shook his head. "I'm asking you, do you want money or your life?" Chao Juanmin's face froze. Even her manager's face changed. "Will I die?" At first, she thought that Chao Juanmin just had some physical abnormalities. Chapter 707. Chao Jin stood up and said, "You took someone else's things. Although you didn't know, you should have known. Now that your middleman is in trouble, you are not an evil person. If you give up everything you have now, I can save your life. If you don't, you will die in less than a month." Her words were simple and direct, and Chao Juanmin was scared silly. Her face was pale. What was the difference between giving up everything she had now and dying? Li Lian's face also turned green. Giving up everything? Did she mean what Chao Juanmin had now or all her fame and status? But there didn't seem to be any difference. Chao Jin said, "Have you thought about it?" Chao Juanmin had been in fear for the past few days. Now that she heard this, she broke down. "I asked you to solve this problem. Do you think my 10 million yuan is for nothing? If it wasn't for Fan Jin's recommendation, if you asked someone else, they would have let you die." Chao Jin supported his chin and looked at her with interest. He was not angry. "I didn't come for the 10 million yuan. I just thought that your life could be saved. Of course, if you want to die, I won't stop you. You can do whatever you want." Not being angry didn't mean that she would spoil Chao Juanmin. If Chao Juanmin couldn't give up everything she had now, at most, she would give up her life. Chao Juanmin's face stiffened. At first, she thought that Chao Nian was young, but now, every word she said pierced her heart. She still wanted to struggle. "You don't even know what happened to me. How can you be so sure I don't know what happened to you? You made a deal with someone else. How can I know the details? But isn't it easy to tell if you're going to die or not?" She was a high and mighty female celebrity, but in front of Chao Jin, she was just an ordinary person. Chao Juanmin was completely stunned. Li Lian came forward and asked Chao Jin, "Master, what is the reason?" Chao Jin pointed at Chao Juanmin. Back then, she wanted to be famous, so she made a deal with someone. She only thought that she had met a master. Why don't you think about it? How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Do you think that just by paying money, you can offset what you got? How did you get your money? You relied on the luck you obtained through trading, and this luck didn't belong to you in the first place. If you didn't make the deal, with your fate, you could have also become famous. However, you wouldn't have been able to reach your current status. Unfortunately, you had to get involved in such a matter and destroyed your fate. Now, you even have to bear the backlash. If you can't give up your current glory and wealth, then you can only bring it into the coffin and enjoy it. If Qiao Jin had said that she was dead, it would have been fine, but he had said that she was destined to be popular. This made Qiao Juanmin unable to figure it out. Tears welled up in her eyes. At that time, she didn't suspect Qiao Jin mainly because Qiao Jin was right. She had indeed met someone at that time. The other party had said that he wanted to make a deal with her to make her popular. However, the other party only wanted money. After she had money, she had paid a lot of money to the other party. She had thought that the other party would pester her, but who knew that the other party had disappeared a few years ago? She had been unable to contact him, so she didn't take it seriously. It was only recently that she realized that some things were not so easy to get rid of. Chapter 708. After entering this industry, some things weren't as easy as outsiders thought. The female celebrities of her era had all sorts of unorthodox methods. They would do anything for fame. However, Qiao Juanmin became popular, so she thought she had found the right method. She had indeed found the right method, but there was still a price to pay. Li Lian was shocked when she heard Qiao Jin's words. Juanmin, you really... Back then, when there were rumors in the industry, she didn't believe them as a manager. The main reason was that other female celebrities more or less had rumors of raising ghosts, but she had never seen such things around Qiao Juanmin. Qiao Juanmin didn't hide anything from her. There were no secrets at all. She thought that Qiao Juanmin really relied on her own strength and good luck to become famous. However, recently, Qiao Juanmin started to have problems. Only then did she realize that Qiao Juanmin was hiding something from her. She started to become strange and didn't even go to the hospital. Instead, she asked Li Lian to find a fortune teller for her. She found a few, but they were all liars. Only one of them said a word and was helpless. They prayed to God and Buddha. When Qiao Juanmin complained on her phone, Fan Jin found out and recommended this fortune teller. However, Fan Jin didn't know the specific reason for Qiao Juanmin's problem. She thought it was just a small problem. Who knew that Qiao Juanmin's problem was so big? Qiao Juanmin immediately cried. I was too young at that time. I had no choice. A talent scout took a fancy to me. I entered this industry because I wanted to earn money. But at that time, there were so many outstanding people. There were also people who were prettier than me. I just relied on my face. How could I be so lucky to become popular? I couldn't get any films or resources. Someone wanted to sleep with me, but I wasn't willing. I was even banned. If I hadn't met that person and she told me there was such a method, I wouldn't have taken this path. She said that as long as I earn more money and do more good deeds, I'll pay her more. I've been doing charity for so many years. I've donated more than $1 billion. How many people in the industry have donated more than me? I thought it would be fine as long as it was over. Who knew? Qiao Jin said softly, if everything in this world could be settled with money, it would have been over long ago. Doing charity to increase one's providence is built on people who haven't done anything wrong. If you borrow the providence of others, that's an original sin. Others might understand, but karma won't. Qiao Juanmin couldn't stop crying. Seeing her cry, Li Lian also felt sad. After all, she had been with her for more than 10 years, and she was also the one who brought her up. The two of them were like sisters. Li Lian looked at Qiao Jin and couldn't care less. Master, what method do we have to use to save her? Qiao Jin said, the one who borrowed luck was mainly the formation master. She was a medium. Now that something has happened to the formation master, she has suffered as well. You have to donate all your money, but I think you. She frowned. The person whose luck was borrowed should be fine. Qiao Juanmin was destined to become popular. It was just that it happened a little later. This borrowing of luck messed up her providence and forcefully brought forward the time. The person she borrowed luck from was definitely someone very impressive. There were rules to the backlash. Chao Juanmin's backlash was her entire body turning into a tree. It was a little unusual. She looked at Chao Juanmin and said, "I want to know who the master who lent you luck is." Qiao Jin, she raised her eyebrows. Ferdinand his father? How did things come to this after so many twists and turns? Qiao Jin suddenly remembered that Song Yanqing had once said that the woman who kept She Kanyun was the foundation of his fortune. Later, after She Kanyun got up, the woman disappeared, and no one knew where she was. The woman who kept She Kanyun was Ran Wanyue's elder sister. Ran Wanyue was an array master who helped Chao Juanmin borrow luck, but now it was backfiring. Song Yanqing's fate had been changed. She suddenly felt that some things were not over and had been strung together. Chapter 710. The array master who Song Yanqing had swapped his life providence was dead. Qiao Jin could sense it clearly through her perception. If this array master could survive after Song Yanqing took back his life providence, then this array master was even more heaven-defying than Qiao Jin. However, Qiao Jin had a feeling that Ran Wanyue must have had some other involvement with this matter since she was involved in such a distant relationship. Now that she had easily obtained some information about Ran Wanyue from Zhongli Peining, she could directly use the array to deduce where she was now. In front of Chao Juanmin, Qiao Jin directly began to deduce where Ran Wanyue had gone. However, she was a little surprised by this deduction. Ran Wanyue was dead. However, she did not die when she went missing a few years ago. She had died recently. In other words, Ran Wanyue was indeed dead. The array had lost its suppression and began to backfire on Chao Juanmin. Moreover, she saw that Ran Wanyue had died in the country. After a pause, she saw Chao Juanmin's worried and desperate expression and said, "I'm going somewhere. I'll come back tomorrow." Chao Juanmin immediately asked, "Where are you going?" Now that she knew that Qiao Jin was a master, her tone became more respectful. Qiao Jin said, "I'm going to see where the person who lent you luck died." She said it very calmly, but when Chao Juanmin heard the word died, she shivered and widened her eyes. Is she really dead? Generally speaking, it was very likely that she could not be contacted. Qiao Jin said, "You'll know when you see the body." After saying that, she directly left. Her agent, Li Lian, asked someone to send Qiao Jin away. When she returned, Chao Juanmin was in tears. Could she be a liar who told the world about me after she went out? I don't think so. And she didn't pay. Chao Juanmin was speechless. When she came, she did not even ask for a deposit, which meant that Chao Juanmin had not paid yet. Qiao Jin left Chao Juanmin's manor and booked a plane ticket. The array master died in Xiangju, another city across the river from Shuidu. In the last century, the entertainment industry in this city was very developed. She Kanyun started his business there. Moreover, Xiangju was also very popular with some unorthodox practices. According to Zhongli Peining, there were still many active array masters, but they did not have any contact with the array masters on the mainland. With the help of the spirit group, it was very easy for her to go there. She arrived in Xiangju that very afternoon. This city gave her a very dull feeling. Through the array, she found the place where Ran Wanyue had died. When she saw the location, she pondered for a moment. In front of him was a mountain forest. Next to it was an old tube-shaped apartment that was about to be demolished. It seemed that there were still people living there. On the land where Ran Wanyue died, there was a patch of towering trees growing. However, they were separated and green. It could even be used as a ready-made park landscape. The place next to the mountain forest was an asphalt road. Near the edge of the asphalt road, there was a pile of fallen branches and leaves. There was a place on the edge of the road that was bulging, as if it had been moved by someone. It seemed that something was buried there. Qiao Jin lowered her eyes and thought for a few seconds. Then, she decisively called the police anonymously. Because Ran Wanue's body was below, she could not dig it up. Moreover, there was more than one body below. The shape of the trees in front of her was very similar to the old bark skin that grew out of Chao Juanmin after she had suffered a backlash. Although most of the trees were the same, Xiao Jin knew that Ran Wanue had died here and Chao Juanmin had suffered a backlash for a reason. Chapter 711. The police soon arrived. Xiao Jin had called the police, but they did not know who had called the police. They only received the news that there was news underground, so they were a little nervous. Xiao Jin watched from a building far away. No one knew she was there. Less than 10 minutes after she saw the police arrive, she had already dug something out. She was shouting and yelling for people to go over and help. Many police officers came. Half an hour later, Xiao Jin saw them carrying a corpse out of the ground. The number of residents who came to watch the show increased. When they saw the corpse, everyone exclaimed in shock. They were shocked that there was a corpse here. The corpse was wrapped in a body bag. When it was dug out, the corpse was extremely smelly. It almost made people want to vomit. However, that was not the main point. The forensic doctor came and opened the body bag. In an instant, a stench spread through the area. Those who were close by almost fainted from the stench. A large group of police officers almost vomited on the spot. It was not that the corpse was scary, but it was too smelly. It was so smelly that it was unbearable. The people who came to watch the show all dispersed. The stench from the soul was unbearable. Even if they were just here to watch the show, they could not stand it anymore. The police officers quickly found masks and put them on. The forensic doctor also put on the masks again before opening the body bag. After the stench dissipated, it was barely bearable. When the forensic doctor saw the corpse, he was stunned. The corpse in the body bag was not that scary, but it was hard to understand. It was the corpse of a woman. Her face was swollen and pale. However, the strange thing was that the right half of her face had mutated. It had become old bark like a tree trunk, causing her skin to be damaged and her facial features to be distorted. The forensic doctor had seen many corpses, but he had never seen such a strange one. He was shocked. When the other police officers saw it, they were also shocked. However, before they could carefully examine the corpse, the police officer who was digging the corpse said nervously, "There seems to be another corpse in the pit." The others immediately looked over. Indeed, there seemed to be something at the bottom of the pit that had just been dug out. It seemed to be a human finger bone. The police officers immediately continued digging. The corpse from earlier was to be sent to the police station for investigation. No one knew who had called the police, nor did they know why a body had been buried here. This could be considered big news in the vicinity. Not long after, the other corpse was dug up as well. It was the same female corpse, but it looked similar to the first corpse. Soon, the identity of this female corpse was recognized on the spot. That was because she was Ran Baoqing, a famous rich woman in Xiangju in the last century. It was as if she had died at the best time. Her current appearance was still as complete as before her death, allowing others to see her magnificent charm. Actually, she was quite good-looking at that time. She was rich and pretty in that era, so she was the object of many pursuers. After Ran Baoqing's body was dug out, Xiao Jin stood in the distance and watched. Suddenly, he saw something floating out of Ran Baoqing's body. That thing was a ray of light. Xiao Jin stretched out his hand slightly, and the ray of light rushed towards her. When she looked down, she heard a tender voice. "Big sister." Xiao Jin turned his head. It was a little boy in a t-shirt, about 7 or 8 years old. Chapter 712. The boy looked young, and his family background was probably not very good. There were traces of seams at the waist of his t-shirt. The children living here were indeed not very well off. The people in Xiangju spoke the local dialect, But this child spoke pure Mandarin. He looked at Xiao Jin and asked cautiously, "Sister, what are you doing here?" Xiao Jin stood on such a high floor and looked at things in the distance. To this little boy, she was like a fairy flying in the sky that he saw in cartoons when he was young. Xiao Jin smiled and said, "I'm standing here." The boy still maintained a trace of innocence. He walked up and looked at Xiao Jin seriously and curiously. "Sister, are you a fairy?" Xiao Jin said, "I'm not." The boy said, "But you look exactly like a fairy." Xiao Jin said cruelly, "Watch less TV. It's a lie." The boy was speechless. Xiao Jin saw that Ran Baoqing's body had been dug up and the items had been obtained. She wanted to find out what happened back then. What are you doing up there? Come down quickly," a woman screamed. A woman in the same ordinary clothes rushed upstairs and stared at the little boy. "What are you doing here?" She saw Xiao Jin again. She was a little surprised and a little flustered. "Miss, this child didn't say anything wrong, right?" Her panic was a little strange. Xiao Jin just shook her head. The little boy named Yu suddenly pointed at Xiao Jin and said, "This sister is a fairy." "Mom, didn't you say that fairies don't exist?" "Look, I saw a fairy today." Unexpectedly, this sentence made the woman quite nervous. Her face turned pale. She looked at Xiao Jin and then at him. At that moment, she looked at Xiao Jin with a little fear in her eyes. She covered the little boy's mouth as if she wanted to drag him down. She scolded in a low voice, "Don't talk nonsense, don't talk nonsense." When Xiao Jin saw how nervous she was, she looked down at the boy again. Yu's mouth was covered, so she didn't make a sound. She followed her mother quietly. Xiao Jin stared at her for 2 seconds and suddenly said, "Wait." The woman's body stiffened as she looked at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin walked over and said coldly, "Why are you so nervous when you see me?" The woman looked at Xiao Jin, her eyes darting up and down. She stared at Xiao Jin for a long time, as if she was trying to determine if she was a real person. After a long time, she felt Xiao Jin's fresh breath. She let out a sigh of relief, but she refused to let go of the child's mouth. She only smiled apologetically. "The child likes to talk nonsense. Miss, don't take it seriously." She spoke fluent Mandarin. She should have migrated from the city across the river from Xiangju, not a local. Xiao Jin smiled. "He said that I was a fairy. How is that nonsense? Or are you afraid that I'm really something he imagined?" The woman's face suddenly turned pale. Her body began to tremble violently. She shouldn't have been so frightened by Xiao Jin's words. Her whole body was trembling. Xiao Jin glanced at Yu and suddenly reached out to touch his forehead. "He's too young. His ability is not so strong. He can't transform into a living person." Huff, huff, huff. The woman almost screamed from her throat. She was almost scared out of her wits by Xiao Jin's words. However, she seemed to be controlled by something and couldn't scream. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.